All right, here we are, the long-awaited Google episode, Money Mobsters episode 3 with the one and only Dougie. Dougie, how's it going, man? Nice shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, got a old carp, keeping it real.
Two guys, 6 shades right here, 3 pairs of sunglasses. So we've got more sunglasses than people here on the stream today.
That's pretty cool.
So what were you saying right before we entered here about round tripping?
Oh, I wasn't talking about.
I thought you said that we've round tripped on the price action.
Not with the round trip of last week. Was talking about. I was saying we have round tripped on the hype cycle because you were all hyped to do this last week, and we were trying to figure out when we were going to do because Google had its pop. Right.
It did. Yeah. It had the pop up to 290 after Buffett
had the pop, and then the whole market crashed. And I was like, oh, Austin, no one's actually going to care about this thing you've been working on and so excited to do. And then we popped again today. So here you go.
Yeah. It's just, I can just pull up the chart here. I mean, it's just been one of these stocks that just really hasn't stopped moving. For the last 6 months, it's kind of been nonstop up and to the right, which is no complaints here. Let's get into this slide deck that I built out here.
Yeah, I'm excited to give you a chance to go through this. I don't know how big of an audience we have. I was trying to get some folks to mention that we were doing a Google deep dive today.
Yeah.
But apparently there's a meta deep dive going on tonight too. So
that's another good one. I know lots of people are looking at that one.
But this is a fantastic amount of work here, and I just wanted to let you know I got a lot out of it. I appreciated the work you were doing on it, and can't wait for you to get some feedback from.
Oh yeah. The discussion is all ahead, my friend. And, here's the chart that we were just talking about, 6 months. It's a little bit too small on the screen there, but actually this is outdated because it's not even $300 anymore. It's $330 in the after hours, which we've got some news that we'll get to.
Yeah, but you're up 10% since you made this slide.
Exactly. Yeah, I made this slide 24 hours ago, and it's already 10% outdated here. So
that's not Zeta moving 10%. That's Google moving 10%.
Exactly.
Yeah, so not investment advice. Do your own research. Neither of us are qualified to give you advice.
Yeah, this is just meant to be a company profile, guys. I've done lots of research on the company themselves, but this is just my findings. So do seriously do your own research. This is not investment advice. This is an investment that I've made, but it might not suit your particular needs. So. Yeah, with that, there's an obligatory slide there with not underlined there. So I wanted to kick it off by just talking about a little bit of the thesis of what I saw back when it was, $150, $160 back in May and June, and everyone was, saying Sundar is just a manager, and search is being disrupted, 10 blue links, yada yada yada. And why I thought that it had a good risk to reward profile at the time. And we'll get into, what I'm going to do with the position moving forward and some of the things that have really happened in the last 6 months that have continued to develop the business progress. But, just taking a step back sort of as a learning lesson here and just to catalog what my thoughts were 6 months ago while it's fresh. I just wanted to go down that walk here. So we can see the historical PE ratio of the company. And, I was buying really heavily under this, $20 PE range when it seemed like the bottom was supported. Are we really going to send Google to 14, 15, 13 PE? Like at a certain point, it was 16. It was a 16 PE. And what that really was doing is it was pricing in, absolutely zero growth from the business. Matter of fact, it was pricing in destruction. But then you looked over on the other side of the spreadsheet there, and you could see EPS continuing to climb. Just as a reminder to folks, GPT was released in 2022. So, if we were going to see some disruption there, you can look at the EPS chart. I put this red box around the two most recent reported quarters because we did not have that information at the time in May and June. But, this doesn't really look like a business that was being disrupted. So I put there, even if the company were to stay at a low 16 PE and not get re-rated, if they just continue to grow their EPS 30% every year, like they've sort of been rolling right along doing, you're still going to get a good return there, without necessarily even having to worry about, catching up to the multiple that Apple has or catching up to the multiple that Microsoft has. So I felt that a floor was really built in there that, short of entire, core business disruption, which we'll definitely get into, this one had the bottom priced in and all the upside was there.
Okay. So I want to go back and make one comment on that slide for a little more simple. So essentially what we're looking at here is, if earnings per share continues to grow, that means the multiple stays the same. So no one is getting more excited. They're not pricing in additional growth. They're not giving you anything extra than what you're already getting right now. You're just talking about, if the earnings per share grow, you'll get a double in 3 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So if, even if the multiple stays exactly the same, if the company continues to grow earnings,
right.
The
I just was trying to make that clear, because we get a little verbose. So,
of course. Now, so here's how I was thinking about it back in May when the stock was at 172. So this is, not relevant to today. So don't look at these numbers and say, hey, these are price targets that Austin's giving. These are not price targets. This is my internal price targets for my use only at the time. But basically, the thesis was that the LLM fears of disrupting search and cannibalizing it were well overblown. There's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, Gemini was right there in the mix. Second of all, Google has one of the best data sets of any company, arguably the best data set of any company in the world, to be able to take advantage of this. They had their own cloud, their own silicon. They had all the pieces that they needed to win. They also have the advertisers. Companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, they don't have the advertisers there yet. So, everyone's worried about agentic commerce taking over, Search 2.0, disrupting Search 0.1. But they didn't even have advertisers, and still don't have advertisers set up to actually claim any of that business. So there's really only still two games in town to advertise in terms of mass market. You've got Google and Meta. So that didn't really change. And I know that you're pricing in what could happen in the future. But if the bears were right, here was the first hypothetical scenario. If the bears are right and search really modestly flattens out and the PE ends up compressing to 14, for the search has grown at about 13 to 15% historically, just going all the way back to 2012, back to when they went public. Everyone freaked out when search grew the one quarter 10%, and I think the fear was that it was just gonna go back to single digits, but that still would mean that they're a cash cow. That business doesn't dry up and margin compress right away, and their operating income for that line of business doesn't go to zero. It just stops growing. Now they've got other businesses around that were going to continue to grow, like cloud, like YouTube. You've got burgeoning businesses like Wiz that were going to help drive cloud growth. You've got Waymo. You've got TPUs. You got all these different businesses that you're kind of getting for free here. So if you looked at, EPS continuing forward to $13 per share and then just flattening out, that was kind of your worst case scenario. So if you go back to this chart here, we were looking at maybe $9 EPS trailing 12 months. Now we're at 10. We have the benefit of seeing the last two quarters there. But if you just said, if you extrapolated out, maybe inappropriately, but if you just extrapolated out this EPS continuing to grow, and you got to $13 within 2 years, really conservative. The stock at a 14 PE would have been 182. So worst case scenario, you don't make any money over the course of those 2 years. So dead weight. But the opportunity was that search continues to march along. They defend their moat. This is the second scenario here. They continue to grow their EPS by about 30%. Market commentary and sentiment shifts. The stock floats around the 20 PE. So, they're not bargain basement prices anymore at 16, 17, 18 PE. They get back up to 20 PE. And then by the end of 2027, they get to $15 EPS.
Right.
So again, you have this EPS chart just sort of continuing as it does for the next few years, getting to $15 trailing 12 months. And that would give you a $300 price. We've actually blown past that.
Blown past it, yes.
Blown past it. And the reason we've blown past it is because I think we've actually walked into the scenario 3 that I put here, which is search growth actually gets accelerated by AI, not destroyed, because you've got more people using the product, and you're also getting more intent. So when people are typing in more information into their search queries, you're actually finding out their intent to a more precise level. If they just type in 3 words versus typing in a whole paragraph, the paragraph is going to be preferred because that just gives the advertisers and publishers
in.
Yeah, it just gives them more data points to know how to, recommend content to you. And I think one of the things that gets lost on folks is that if you have expanded use cases, it actually increases the sum of the pie. I think people are looking at it as this is moving the cheese, but what it actually was is just a different game. You're moving from search 1.0 to 2.0, and you're getting more information, more utility out of it. It's better for your users, and your recommendation engine is getting even better. So what Google is filtering for you becomes even more valuable. If there's unlimited content online and content can be produced faster than ever, those sorting engines those sorting features and functions actually become more valuable, not less valuable, because there's no way that you would ever be able to find exactly what you're looking for without that feature and tool that actually allows you to find the precise information you're looking for. Does that track?
Yeah. I think one of the things people were most bearish is the wrong word. They were most cautious about, and I know I fell into this camp as well, was the idea that Google was just going to sit in their hands and they were incentivized to defend the moat of search and not to work on anything that may destroy it. And I still think that was the case. As we've seen them be able to ramp up their AI all of a sudden, and really, really hit the throttle, I do get the sense that they've been sitting on some stuff for a couple of years now, just milking the 10 blue links where they could have been pushing the boundaries, and they weren't incentivized to do that because there was no competition doing it, and no one was paying for AI. It was still a science experiment everybody thought was stupid.
Yeah, I mean, why risk your cash cow, your golden goose, when if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just keep it the way it is. And then when a new, somewhat risky experimental technology comes along, you can just have them be the guinea pig, try it out, see what the regulatory environment looks like on it, see how people are using it, see what type of information that is useful for, what the use cases are, and then you can transition your business.
I like that Sergey came back. That's.
Yeah,
and I was listening to some of the All In guys talk today. I'm actually re-listening to his interview, a little bit of his interview preparation for this, and man, he did come in and lit a fire under folks. Because
and he wasn't the only one either. Noam Shazir, he went and started Character AI, and they paid about $3 billion to go and get that company. They acquired the company just a few years into, them raising funding and getting their business, and it was mostly for the CEO, Noam Shazir.
Right. Yeah.
So, they've definitely had a resurgence of talent back to the company as people realize the opportunity that's here. And of course, in this scenario 3, you've also got a few things that, it's only been 6 months, so these haven't come to fruition yet. But Waymo, which we'll talk about more, I consider that a call option on the company. If Waymo ends up doing really, really well, they scale, which they've shown that they're doing, and we start to see positive operating contribution margin from YouTube, Veo 3 and Project Mariner. I mean, all those different things could all just be their own $500 billion business alone if successful. So, and I see, lackability here, saying, Waymo's in Scottsdale. I'm also in the Phoenix metro area. I just see them nonstop. I mean, I literally cannot leave my house without seeing a Waymo. It's really incredible how much they've scaled. This is a tweet from Arya. So I interact with him on Twitter. I'm not sure how much you guys know him, but I think he's back in May. He had the right way of framing the valuation of the company here. So this was back when the stock was $150. And if you look at cloud with a 50 billion ARR, and then you've got YouTube ads at 40 billion, and then an estimated 20 billion in YouTube premium. Netflix is at a 12 price to sales. You give YouTube a 10 price to sales. You come up with a valuation number for YouTube. And then you look at the market cap, which was 1.8 trillion at the time. If you just add up cloud and YouTube, you already get to $1.3 trillion market cap. So then you basically are getting search, Waymo, TPU, DeepMind, network, Pixel, you're just maps. You're getting all these different businesses for what was about $500 billion at the time. They were essentially pricing in that search was going to be a dead business within 10 years. And I thought that was really just unfair to what we were seeing in the numbers. So as he says it right there, couldn't have said it better. What a joke. And that's why I was pounding the table. And at this point in time, I was 55% deep in the company, and about a third of that position was call options. It was in the money, longer dated call options. Mm-hmm. But this was the point that I'm like, okay, it really, if it goes down to 130, it's just going to be at a 13 PE, and I just can't pass that up. It's one of those scenarios where if you get a fat pitch, I felt obligated to swing at it.
Well, you got to separate the sucker from his money.
So here's the operating income of the company. You can see a lot of this is from Google services. Now, what a lot of people in the bearish camp at this point were pointing out was that a lot of the operating income, i.e. the profit of the company, was coming from search. Keep in mind that this Google services section also includes YouTube premium subscriptions and includes Play Store subscriptions. It's not just search. So you have a lot of businesses that are involved within that 132 billion number that you see there. But you can also see this purple number here, 3.2 billion, 4.9, 6.1, and now it's up to 10.7 billion. This is cloud growth. So cloud is really quickly becoming a profit driver for the company. I know a decent amount of people were talking about this at the time, but I still think it shocked people the way that it's reaccelerated to mid 30% growth and the way that their backlog has grown. And we'll get more into cloud near the end here.
How is the market share doing? As I understand, I believe AWS is now kind of getting the lion's share of the new cloud business. Like, this is one of the things, like, this is not necessarily turning bearish, but okay, so you actually have it here.
Yeah, well, these are AI startups.
Everybody is going to get more cloud work, right? Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, everybody's going to get more here because this is a new form of business that everybody has to expand on. It's like having a railroad it didn't matter which company you were, all the railroads were getting built, and the ones that were being used, everybody got paid.
Exactly. Yeah, it's digital infrastructure here. Now, this is AI startup market share. So this isn't representative of the whole market share. AWS is still almost the size of Azure and GCP combined. So AWS still is the king of the castle here. But you can see that Google Cloud is pretty quickly catching up, especially in the AI specific space. And they've acquired Wiz, which did get confirmed 3 weeks ago that the DOJ is going to officially clear it there, the $32 billion acquisition of cybersecurity company Wiz, which is going to allow them to be able to give a unique offering within cloud. But here's the cloud numbers themselves. And man, that revenue chart's just beautiful. The cloud growth there, just sticking the landing there at 35%. And then you can see the RPO just getting absolutely blown out the door. And one thing that I thought was really interesting here, since we're on cloud, we got the NATO deal just yesterday.
Right.
So we're gonna see some governmental public sector dependence there on the cloud. You've also got the LLM models that are supposedly competing with Google search that are having to jump on board on GCP. So a few months back, OpenAI said that they're going to have to use GCP because they've got some issues with Microsoft and how they're going to unravel that. I know they've got an agreement that reads like a really difficult contract to enforce with 9 steps in a committee that they haven't even named. So here's the comment from Lackability. Not sure how I feel about that. I'm not the biggest fan of Sam, but he's making a great product. But he's running out of compute with Microsoft, and Microsoft can only stretch their neck out so far before they risk their own business for what's supposedly a nonprofit. And then you also have Anthropic using not only just the cloud services, but the TPUs. And then just today, it came out, this was hours ago after the market, Meta is actually in talk to use Google TPUs as well. So you've really had a lot of just winning in the last 6 months from the cloud team and the TPU team, and those things are working together wonderfully.
I didn't mean to get you out of order on your whole deck.
But yeah, you can see the operating margin there from cloud. It just continues to expand. So if this ends up at a 30 or 40% terminal operating margin, which is entirely possible, this is just going to be a really, really big profit center the higher and higher that ARR goes. And if you're growing 35% top line a year on this and your RPO continues to expand, this could be an evergreen space. It's a long-term secular growth area. All right. So let's talk about the other area. Oh yeah, let's talk about this first here. This is revenue growth. So as you can see from the company in this chart in the top right-hand corner, they've grown about 15 to 20% company-wide top line historically. You can see the spike there from the pull forward in demand in 2021 when stimulus checks were going out. And then, of course, you can see it crash right back down during the recession, not recession of 2022, depending on which administration you ask. And then you can actually see, once again, the red boxes there showing the 2 quarters that we've seen since I sort of made the investment through all this together. But this orange arrow in the bottom left-hand corner, this 9.8%, this is just search growth. So in the bottom left-hand corner, this is percentage growth year over year of the search business itself. And this is the number that was freaking everybody out, 9.8%. And this was supposedly the disruption that GPT was causing. Now, if you look at the other advertising businesses that are within their space here, this is Amazon advertising. You wouldn't know it, but look at the same percentage growth here, where you've actually got a trailing off. This is the bottom chart here. You have a huge pull forward in demand in 21, and then 22, you've actually got a slowing down here. The same thing actually happened to Meta as well. So people should understand that consumer advertising is cyclical, just like building houses. There's sometimes that people are going to be willing to spend more money on advertising because they're getting lots of customers and people have money to spend. So they're getting a good return on advertising spend. And other times people don't have money in their pocket, they're broke. So no one wants to spend on advertising. So what was being used here as evidence of search being disrupted, you could actually see across the entire advertising space with Amazon advertising, Meta, Snapchat. These are the numbers here on the bottom for Snapchat, which you could see sort of seeing some weakness since 2020 into 2022. And this is where I started putting together that this actually wasn't search disruption at all. This was just a weaker than normal macro backdrop. And people were seeing what they wanted to see when it came to search. Did you have any notes on that, Dougie?
No, that's really insightful. I still might have drawn the conclusion that what you weren't seeing was OpenAI, because obviously they don't have to report anything. So that's very insightful, though, to have picked that out of the entire market and said, oh, all of these look the same. They're all performing the same. This dip is in the same spot on everybody's chart. So
yeah, and here's Mastercard.
So you're not. ChatGPT might be taking Google search, but is it taking TikTok ads? Is it taking Snapchat ads? I'm not sure that ChatGPT is a competitor for the same ad space that like a Snapchat is getting, right? Or
not at all.
Those aren't search. Those aren't queries.
You would have been silly to say that Amazon ads or Meta ads were being disrupted by GPT. Like, they're not related at all. So I think people were looking at that temporary weakness. And here's a chart of MasterCard purchase transaction volume. And this is just same dip. Exactly. You can see I drew the channel there in red. You can see the demand pull forward in 21. Everyone gets their stimulus checks, and then we slide. So this was definitely part of the thesis here. And here's the digital advertising market just in general. I think people, when you look at an evergreen technology space, you have a network effect with Google search. People want to sell their product, and users want to find the product that they're looking for. The more users you have, the more valuable it becomes to advertise on that space. The more users that you can advertise to on that space, the more sense it makes for you to advertise on that platform. It's a self-enforcing flywheel effect, if you will. Just like Meta, the more people that you have on social media, the harder it is to actually start a new social media platform that's not Facebook or Instagram, just because no one's going to be on it. Everyone's already on that one platform. There it is. This market continues to grow. I think people tend to underestimate the size that this digital marketing space is actually turning into, because it's actually relatively new. Digital advertising, for the most part, was not a thing prior to the internet. So you're still talking about a business here that is only just a few decades old and is still growing. And more of the advertising spend is going to the digital portion. Less money is going to newspapers and billboards. More money is going to podcasts, advertisements on websites, affiliate links, YouTube, user-generated content like Reddit. So I think this is an interesting way to look at it too, where people were basically thinking of the law of large numbers and saying Google is already huge. They already do a very, very large number in search revenue. How could they possibly get bigger? This is how the market gets bigger, and it's an evergreen space that just continues to grow, because as long as Google makes the users happy, people use the platform. As long as they're using the platform, Google has people to advertise to. And as long as there's lots of users, those publishers want access to what those users are looking for. I'm drastically oversimplifying it here, but I think that part lots of people missed. Getting out of order here a little bit. So this is the rest of the business without search. So I've removed search from this chart, and we're still almost at $200 billion of revenue. I think
that's fantastic. Yeah. I'm gonna quote Chamath and say this is a fantastic money-making business.
Yeah, I mean, it's just incredible. You've got, without search, you've got 4 other businesses here that are all doing more than $25 billion ARR. So you've got YouTube, which is this light purple color here. And then you've also got subscriptions, platforms, and devices. That's going to cover your Pixel, your Play Store, your YouTube Premium. And you've got network, which is still printing out money. So all those ads that you go onto a website that's like a blog post and there's like 3 ads like all over the place. That business is still printing money. It's not growing, but that is still making money for them at a good margin. And that old school version of the web is still there. Here is all the different properties that Alphabet owns. And I think there's so many here that I think people actually forget what it is that they own. So I'll read them off here for the listeners. We've got Search, Cloud Wiz, Mandiant YouTube, YouTube TV with NFL Sunday Ticket and all the different services that they offer, YouTube Music. You've got what is basically the Microsoft 365 free version of DocSheet, Slides, Drive, which we're using right now. We've got Google Meet, Photos, which people will pay for storage space because photos are important. And it's kind of a pain to move those. You've got Gmail.
Yeah, Meet is Zoom/Teams.
Exactly. Yeah, and they've been working on Meet to make it even better. They've got a low latency version of that feels like you're like in the room with the other person. I'm not sure if you've seen that demo or not, but those are pretty cool.
When are they making a Streamlabs out of it?
Streamlabs, that's a good question. I did reach out to YouTube support when a friend of ours was having some issues with, the streaming platform. I reached out to YouTube. I said, can you guys please make one of these internally? Because it just seems to make sense and it feels like they should be capable of doing it. You've also got Google Fiber, so more infrastructure working on it. You've got Chrome, Images, News, Flights, which is good for monetizing flights. You've also got like the hotels tab in there. You've got DeepMind, you've got Waymo. They own Android. They own the TPUs. Google Pay. I mean, it's just the list goes on and on and on. They've got investments into, a drone project called Google Wing. They've got investments into ASTS, SpaceX, Apptronic. You put all these businesses together, and there's going to be a lot of synergies there as well. So you can take the sum of the parts argument, but if you put the sum of the parts together, like they have in this CNBC graphic, you actually have to do an additional calculation, which is what is the value of search, and then what is the value of cloud, and then what is the value of YouTube. Now, what is the value of all 3 of those businesses together working cohesively? Because there's going to be some synergies there. Yeah.
Well, you also get to operate a bunch of those businesses under this with little or no overhead. That I guess we would say Ma Bell back in the day, but we would say Alphabet now that Alphabet operates. So like Google Wing doesn't have to have its own HR department, right? It can rely on just the resources of the nuts and bolts to operate a business. And I can tell you from being a small business owner, just operating the business, making the payments, paying the taxes, just the physical work of doing the things that are not operations, that are not your business meeting demand for your customers, providing value to customers, but just complying with the things that business has to do to actually be in business. That's a lot of work. And so when you can have almost a holding company like Alphabet run all of this, for all of these small projects that are able to get up off the ground, um, and start making headway and disrupting, they get to save a lot of costs. So then they can just worry about making their products and growing their user base.
Yeah, because you've got the vertical integration aspect too, where if you own your own storage and compute, that helps you run the hosting for YouTube. If you have recommendation engines from DeepMind, that's going to help you recommend better content on search and YouTube. So now you're actually getting better return on advertising spend when you're advertising on YouTube because you've got a more powerful recommendation engine. And then that recommendation engine is powered by your own silicon. So they're owning multiple layers of the value chain, which, I find that really attractive. Here's some of the acquisitions. You can see DoubleClick on the right is the winner here. Everyone knows about Facebook acquiring Instagram, but I think DoubleClick it's not as popular of a product as Instagram. So I think people forget how valuable DoubleClick was. And then you've got
DoubleClick.
You hate DoubleClick?
I just as like a web developer, web user, everything all being kind of bloatware behind the scenes, I hate DoubleClick. But it is fabulously profitable for Google, and I know why they bought it.
Yeah, and that's really what kicked off their cash cow making days, and what people will refer to as the greatest business model ever. It was that DoubleClick acquisition. And then you've also got YouTube, of course, which they've blown up. They bought it in 2006 when it was relatively early, and they've really done a good job of getting that monetized. And we'll talk more about YouTube here in a second. And then you've got Android and Google Maps there, which I think are really, really valuable. Android, for those who don't know, is actually the market leader. Most Americans will not understand that because iPhones dominate in North America, but throughout the rest of the world, Android is actually number one. So they have the lion's share of the market share.
That's okay. We need to have a talk about that. This may not be the place to have.
Oh, we can get into it.
No, continue with slides. I have this pegged. I know we actually had a couple of posts on X about it earlier today. Now I want to continue that debate.
Cool. This is sort of circling back to that disruption argument of GPT has been released at this point, and everyone is saying that they're going to disrupt Google search. Look how many monthly active users they had. And at the time they had 500 and they were headed towards, I think, 600 million monthly active users. I think now they're, 800 billion, maybe approaching 1 billion monthly active users. It's hard to actually track that because I think even you yourself, Doug, you have some suspicions that a lot of those MAUs are actually just bots. But nonetheless, they have a shit ton of monthly active users. But here's some of the other advertiser plays that have done a significant amount of revenue since 2020, like revenue growth. So you have Meta, who has essentially doubled their business since 2020 and now claims $170 billion of revenue. This is actually 6 months outdated. They're probably at 200 billion now. And then you've got TikTok, who made their way all the way past $20 billion. Bing, believe it or not, does $12 billion of advertising, and Amazon is now over $50-60 billion of advertising revenue as well. So when people talk about the advertising market, I think they pretty much almost always underestimate how big it actually is, because there was enough room, as you can see on the right-hand side, for Google to continue to grow their operating income and net income at the same time as Amazon advertising stood up their business and ramped it to 60 billion ARR. You have TikTok taking the world by storm. You have Snapchat, Etsy, just all these different advertising businesses that are doing extraordinary amounts of revenue, but that really didn't eat into Google search at all. So here's some of the slides that we looked at earlier. This is Amazon search numbers, or sorry, Amazon advertising, which saw that same impact. I won't rehash that. We already went through all this. Let's dig into some meat and potatoes here. Jon Ive and the DOJ trial. So when Google hit $148, I think it was the day that Jon Ive came out and noted in the DOJ trial, Safari searches dropped.
Who is Jon Ive?
Jon Ive is one of the designers of devices over at Apple, or he used to be. I believe he's now separated from the company and he's working with OpenAI to develop like a necklace, but I think they might have scrapped that idea.
Yeah, we don't know what it is. They haven't told us.
Okay. I think that was the speculation.
People have guessed that it might be a necklace, but
okay.
Yeah, Jon Ive is like an iconic designer for Apple products. And if you just look back in history, he basically just copied items out of a 1950s Sears catalog, but he is their iconic designer. Everything that has like a specific look to it that you have ever seen that is an Apple product, and you can identify, hey, that's an Apple product just by looking at it, it's because of Jon Ive.
Yeah, and that's great context. And that's why I think people took what he said in the DOJ court case so seriously. Safari searches has dropped. Now, the algos will pick up on keywords and they will sell things. Searches dropped. That's keywords that they're definitely going to be looking out for. And I think that there was a misunderstanding from folks on what it means for Safari searches to drop. So let's break that down, just like quite literally what it means. Safari does not have the market share. Like they're not the winning browser. First of all, it's only going to be iOS devices. So you're immediately excluding any PC or Android search when you talk about just Safari. And the second thing is when you're talking about just Safari, they're leaving out the biggest player, which is Chrome. They have a 2/3 market share. So the slice of the pie that Q is actually talking about isn't that big relative to the company. So I put here, if 55% of Google's revenue is search, 60% of searches will start on a mobile phone. So 6 out of 10 searches will be mobile search, and then 4 out of 10 will be desktop. Safari has a 30% market share of that 60%, which means that it's really only 10% of Google's revenue originates from a search on Safari. That's very back of the napkin math, but we're talking about a pretty small, relatively small slice of the company. And, it doesn't say anything else about other devices. So this is just talking specifically about Safari searches. This doesn't say I used my iPhone and used Google Chrome and did a search. This doesn't talk about I used my Mac and used Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox or Internet Explorer or Edge or whatever. This doesn't even talk about Gemini. This is specifically talking about I used my iPhone, opened Safari, and then did a Google search. That's like a very specific line of business that they're talking about. The other thing that I think folks missed was the fact that Apple benefits from this relationship where Google pays them $18 billion a year to be the default search engine. That creates a good experience for for Apple phone users, because if you've ever used Yahoo or Bing, it's terrible. I know there was some folks who wanted everyone to switch over to DuckDuckGo. I used it a few times. I'm sorry, I just couldn't do it. Google is the best search engine out there from the user perspective. There's a reason why after all these years, Chrome and search is still
DuckDuckGo gives you something that Chrome is taking for free.
Right.
Which is your privacy and security. So don't hate too hard.
Well, I'm not hating. Right. I'm just being realistic about the fact that the product experience
is they're tiny. So one thing I was going to say with the case you're making here, and I remember this day, I thought this was stupid. because Johnny Ives and the DOJ trial. Like you said, the algos picked up on search dying or, search going down, right? This was the whole bull case for dropping the DOJ trial. Like, Google's being competed by new players in the market. They're not a monopoly. They've got to keep competing to stay ahead of OpenAI. They've got people coming for them. So Johnny saying this actually, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back for the reason the court would have forced any kind of breakup or sale of Chrome.
Yeah, and I snuck it in at the bottom there. You can see the public market was selling the stock for search being disrupted at the same time that the DOJ was going to break up search for being a monopoly. Both of those things can't be true at the same time. You can't be getting disrupted at the same time.
Never underestimate the stupidity of the bureaucracy of the United States federal government. But
and here's the other thing that it comes down to with the DOJ and why I looked at this real hard, because it was a real risk, right? You can't have your legacy business getting blown up by the government. That is a real risk that you should consider. And trying to put a likelihood to whether or not that was going to happen or not, you had to look into the details. So what were the details? Well, first of all, the recommendation from the Judge Mehta was, Amit Mehta actually, was that they were simply just going to take Google Chrome away from Google and just give it to a competitor. That didn't quite make any sense to me. It kind of seemed like they were just stealing a piece of core technology that was developed by Google themselves. The second thing is Chromium is open source. So they've already given their competitors free and open use of the Chrome platform itself. And Atlas
being a great example. Or Edge being a great example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Edge is built on Chromium. Opera is built on Chromium. The new Perplexity and OpenAI agentic AI browsers called Comet and Atlas, those are built on Chromium. And really, if you just took away Chrome from Google, it really would have resulted in a worse experience for everybody. Publishers would have had less data to advertise, so their ads would have been less effective. You would have had like the Google users not being able to find what they want because you would have had to de-link. Anytime that you go into Google search and you're already logged into your profile and on Chrome, it has all that relevant background information on you, so it knows what recommendations to make when you type in a query. If you remove that linking, the product would have just been worse. So it would have been basically a communist steal of the property. You would have given it to a competitor, and the competitor already has that technology available to them. So all you really would have done is just hurt Google and the user at the same time, and the publishers would have been pissed. So I found those options to resolve the situation to be unrealistic. And the other thing that I had in the context of my mind is that we have a national agenda for AI supremacy. If you listen to Friedberg, Sachs, Chamath, you listen to Bissett, you listen to Trump directly from the Oval, AI is something that they do not want to get second place in when it comes to our competition against China. They feel that it's a national imperative. And why would you want to slow down one of your one of your strongest soldiers in the AI war at a national level by making this action that didn't really seem that necessary? And then you had Sundar donate, 1 million, or maybe it was Google. I should double check that. But one of the two of them donated $1 million to Trump's inauguration. We all saw him there. We all saw him rename the Gulf of America and Mount McKinley, and Google Maps was happy enough to oblige those, changed it right away, which I thought was interesting. Then you had Google come out and say that they were going to give $1 contracts to the federal government for cloud. Do you remember that, Dougie?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what I texted you? I said, this is kind of a handshake deal here where hey, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. I'll give you guys free cloud services, or drastically reduced cloud services, and maybe this
So
DOJ
it doesn't
trial
show
goes
up on
away.
Doge.
So
But
yeah.
it's so I gotta credit Alex Karp with this, reminding the world that the U.S. wins at software. It just wins at software. Now, what Sundar was finally able to do is override the legacy hippies in his organization and actually start leveraging his company's dominance to help defend the West and actually provide services to the government in a way that allows it to be stronger, both as a bureaucracy, but also to defend the way of life of Americans as we know it.
That's right. Yeah, very vocal, adamantly vocal, almost public shaming of the other tech companies that weren't willing to help the U.S. DoD, or sorry, Department of War, DOW now. But yeah, just basically shaming everybody else into helping them. And I do have some information on a later slide about, when Sundar kind of took the reins of the company back, there's kind of a culture woke problem at Google. And I think that's just something that you deal with anytime that the majority of your employees live and work in Northern California in a really, really blue area. And Sundar eventually, dropped the hammer and said, guys, this isn't a place to debate politics. This was after 28 people got arrested, 28 people got fired, 9 people got arrested because GCP was working with the Israeli government. And a lot of people within Google decided to make a personal stance there. And, it didn't end so well. It was a sit-in. Some people got arrested. Most of them got fired. And, Sundar came out and said, guys, this is a business. We support the United States of America. This is not a place to debate our personal beliefs. This is a business. And, we're going to treat it as such. So, yeah, good point, Doug. Now, the next day, so after Q comes out and says, searches on Safari are dropping, the very next day, the company comes out and says this quote, we continue to see overall query growth in search. That includes an increase in total queries coming from Apple devices and platforms. So there, it's addressing directly the question. And, there was Google bears on X who were actually telling me at the time that Google management was intentionally misleading investors and saying that what Google said here cannot be true at the same time as what Q said. So what they were saying was Q has to be right because he is under oath in a DOJ trial, whereas what investor relations is saying here in the statement is more likely to be a fib because it's not under oath and it's not, so official. The issue is that both of the statements can be true. As we just talked about, Q specified that it was Safari searches, whereas what Google is saying here is the total queries coming from Apple devices and platforms. So that would include your Macs, and that would also include any searches that were done on Chrome themselves. They continue more generally as we enhance search with new features. People are seeing that Google search is more useful for more of their queries. They're accessing it for new things in new ways, whether from browsers or the Google app, using their voice or Google Lens. So they actually give a few more details here as to how people are using Google search that would not involve Safari. The market totally looked past this one. They did not believe what was being said here, even though Google laid it out for them. Google also has the ability to offer the LLM experience because they own the whole stack. So OpenAI does not have the full vertical stack. So they don't have their own silicon. They don't have their own cloud. So quite simply, if Google can dump the product, which is the LLM, which is the commodity, if they can dump that on the market and they can offer it to people for free.
The LLMs are the commodity. They're all going to zero.
Yeah. Now, some are going to be more useful than others. They're going to ramp revenue. I worry about if they're going to do so at a profitable scale. It seems like Anthropic is confident they can do that. I know there's a big open question mark on whether or not OpenAI is going to be able to pay all their commitments. $1.4 trillion, I think it is.
No way.
But we'll see. It's early.
No way.
Now
they're all going to zero. No one is going to trust an AI LLM to both give you answers and advertise to you, because it's just going to the answer to any question you ask is going to be whoever paid them to give the answer, or at least you can't trust that it won't be.
I think there's a good balance there, right? So if you get a recommendation engine that's both accurate and if it happens to involve a product, yeah, the advertisers are going to bid that up and they're going to want to be there. And, there is kind of some friction there. But as long as the product is not inherently worse for having the advertisements, I think it'll be just fine.
What is the best shoe for me to buy?
Well, that's really subjective question.
Well, but I asked an LLM a question. It's going to give me an answer.
Sure.
It's probably going to give me the answer that the company put the highest bid out for to give me that answer.
Not necessarily. So what if it asks you some clarifying questions and it says, what do you care about? Price, looks, comfort, durability, and you start to answer all those questions, and then it feeds you an advertisement for New Balance or for Crocs or for whatever it is.
And if I'm Nike, I'm furious and I'm pulling my ads.
But you wouldn't pull your ads, because if you're Nike, you need Google because they are that big. There's so many users on Google that you can't really say I'm not going to do business with them. So I think that was actually part of the argument where
at least 10 Blue Links was like, okay, well, it's giving me, I'm searching for shoes. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Here are the shoes that are for sale, right? Now I've asked an AI to give me an answer, which is the best shoe. And it may not ask me a whole bunch of refining questions. It might just give me an answer.
But then it's up to you to actually, punch that in. Hey, I'm looking for a white shoe for under $100 that is size 9.5 that's in stock within 10 miles of me from a store, right? And then it can refer it out. I think having all that additional information can actually help the business.
Yeah. That's not how people use them. And I don't think it's how they want to use them, because it's not how people think. They just want to know what the best shoe is. They don't want to think about, how do I break this question down into all the little pieces and options that the computer is going to want to know about to give me other information. You just want to know what the best shoe is.
Yeah, I mean, it'll
be interesting to see it play out. I'm sorry, I'm not.
No,
get you off your presentation here. It'll just be interesting to see how that plays out, because I'm going to be very dubious about that stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big question around agentic commerce in general. But I think, if you go to the Google shopping page right now, or you go to Amazon, or you go to Etsy, they're already making those decisions for you. You might not recognize it because it doesn't have a spinny wheel that knows that it's sending out to an LLM and then spitting back results out. You just type in shoes on Amazon and then you get a bunch of sort and filter buckets, or you type in Nike shoes on Etsy. But if you type in best shoes on Gemini, I'm sure you'll get a more precise answer, especially if you're more specific. But all of this additional context gives you, a better way to actually convert the ad. So as Mark Mahaney, the analyst at Evercore ISI, points out, this was back in June, if you create a better search product, people use it more. The risk around Google search has been greatly exaggerated. The name of the game is also to show off your most effective ads. You want the ad to convert really well. If you can qualify the lead better, advertisers will bid up the ad. So in your shoe example, if you know that you're looking for a Nike, it not only knows that you're looking for a Nike, but it knows your shoe size, it knows what zip code you're in, and it probably knows how affluent you are and what your conversion ratio has been in the past in terms of you actually buying products or abandoning empty carts. So if the advertiser knows that, we have these shoes, they're in stock, they're exactly what you want, and that you normally buy what you see, maybe you're like an impulsive shopper, the advertiser is more likely to pay for that ad because they know it's better qualified with all the additional context that, the company wouldn't have had 5 years ago with all this data integration. So I think that's interesting. The other thing that I wanted to talk about in here too is AI overviews. I think they've been a huge part of the product story on the search side. AI overviews have over 2 billion monthly active users. So they have successfully, over the last year, transitioned everybody over from the search bar with 10 blue links to having AI overviews on almost any knowledge-based question at the top. And if you want to scroll down, you can continue to do so. And the company has also said that these monetize at about the same rate as what the original search has been. And again, that's because of two things. A, you have more volume coming in because the product is more useful, so people are using it more at a higher frequency. And then the second thing is that qualifying the lead aspect.
I actually had a little bit of experience with this today, and I didn't mention this earlier because I wanted to save it till we got to this point. And that was I ended up doing some searches today related to childhood leukemia because my niece just got diagnosed today. So obviously I start digging in on all kinds of things. And where I used to have to go to, I could just search for like childhood leukemia and then it would bring me WebMD, Mayo Clinic, it would bring me all the different websites. And then I would have to like click into that article and read it and then click back out and research, search again or provide a little more context or something that I was trying to find. Now it's just click, I want more information. And then you get like 5 brackets where it's already broken down, like what are the next topics that you might want to drill down on. So I was able to do probably in a half an hour today what would have taken 4 hours before in just clicking back and forth and reading and refining the results. So this was just a little personal today, and just kind of an aha moment because I knew we were going to be talking about this today, and then this whole other thing happened with my niece, and so it was just one of those things where, and nobody, I don't think any of these companies made money off of my searches because I didn't make any purchases, but yeah, that was it was one of those things that just really hit home today, and made me realize how different using search has changed in the last 18 months.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot more useful, and I think that's being underappreciated. What does Google get from giving you information at no cost without you actually buying anything? Well, what Google gets out of it, and the same thing can be said for maps, sheets, docs, slides, all these free products. Why does Google want to serve their users? Well, because the more useful their product is, the more people are going to use it. So it keeps you within that ecosystem. And then, you might not be actually, the search that you're making today might not be a monetizable search, but you'll have a monetizable search in the future. So they just want to create that.
Yeah, they're going to know, he's going to want to buy flowers or teddy bears or something, right? Like, I understand that, but that's
not even necessarily related to the original search that you did, but they just want you building the habit of actually using the Google search product. Because even if you're not buying the teddy bear or the flowers today, there is going to be a time and point that you're going to buy the flight, you're going to buy the hotel, you're going to look for cars, you're going to buy some clothes. Like you're going to come back to the product that delivered value for you at the time that you needed it when you were seeking information. Okay, and I've got a quote from Sundar here. We are definitely sending traffic to a wide range of publishers. It's higher quality of traffic too. We can observe it. There are ways we can measure it, and the growth compounds. We've been very clear. We are seeing overall query growth in search, including across Apple devices. It feels very far from a zero-sum game. So one of the things that people were saying was everyone is using ChatGPT and they're never using Google again. So they had this idea in their head that if GPT gets 1 million users, that means people are that Google's losing 1 million users. That's a false premise because people can obviously use both of these products at the same time. And here's a demonstration of that. This is a page called SimilarWeb. If you guys aren't familiar with them, you should go follow their X page. They put out great data all the time on a variety of different companies. It's mostly around technology companies, but you can see here that a percentage of Google visitors who will also visit a GPT, it's still in the low teens, but almost all of the GPT users are still using Google. So what that breaks down to is, yes, you do have some GPT users who are falling off and not using the Google product anymore, but the numbers largely say otherwise. So at the beginning of last year, GPT users who also used Google was at 98%, and it's still at 95%. So anyone saying that, I use GPT now and I never use Google anymore, first of all, that might have all just changed and got flipped on its head now that Gemini 3 is out and AI overviews are awesome. But also these numbers here are directly contradicting that statement that I never use Google anymore. It looks like 95% of them to me are still using the product.
I never heard of anyone saying that they were done with ChatGPT or that they were done, that they were done with Google.
I saw lots of it in
there are a
the
lot
comments.
of people who wanted to say they were, but there's nobody who acted like they were.
Well, Josh Brown had even mentioned, my kids never use Google anymore. It's all ChatGPT this, ChatGPT that. I think, respectable investor Chris Camillo also said the same thing, where he was saying, I hardly use Google anymore. And then within about 20 minutes on the very same stream that he said that, I thought it was funny. Not to pick on him a little bit, but he said, I never use Google anymore. I use GPT for everything. And, he's a social ARB investor. 20 minutes later on the very same episode, there he was on Google Trends using it to look up Abercrombie and Fitch or whatever he was looking at that day. So I just found that interesting.
I remember that pod. I was like, oh, okay, well. Yeah, no one uses Google anymore.
Yeah, no one uses Google. So this is Google search revenue. So earlier we looked at a chart that was everything except search, and this is just search. What we can see here is that GPT was released in 2022. So the TTM revenue for search was 160 billion at the time the product got released, and we're now sitting at 215 billion. So the product line itself has grown $50 billion of revenue since GPT came out. The other thing to consider too is if their moat was under attack, we would see probably one of two things: either revenue deceleration or gross margin or EBITDA margin compression. If Google was having a hard time defending their moat, they
would give up their margins.
Exactly. Yeah, to defend their moat, they would have to give up these margins. That didn't happen. You can see it right here in the gross margins and EBITDA margins. EBITDA margin has actually been going up, not down. And there's no gross margin whatsoever. And you can see another note here from Sundar talking about operating costs. We reduced cost by more than 90% for these queries through hardware, engineering, and technical breakthroughs, while doubling the size of our custom Gemini model. That was a quote given back in May for Pro 2.5. So we're now at 3.0. I'm not sure if that's double. It's probably even more than that. I know they've been spitting out tokens like crazy. But what he's saying here is we're reducing the cost to serve through hardware and technical breakthroughs. This could be your TPUs. This is where you see the vertical integration play really
Yeah.
Stepping on the gas.
Yep.
Here's the growth of Gemini.
You want to make one point though.
Yeah, make it.
We are so early in the S curves on the whole AI, LLM, human search / human tool for using AI tools. We're on the bottom of this S curve. Every time a company releases a new version, it's probably going to be the best one available. OpenAI had a little bit of swing and a miss on their latest rev, but when Grok 4 came out, it was by far the best, right? It's like every time these companies iterate, they're coming up with a product that is probably 10 times better than the previous one. So we're just going to see leapfrogging probably for another half a decade, I would think. Just whoever's got the latest release, everybody's going to migrate to that. It's going to be the greatest thing ever. And I don't.
Well, it depends on the hardware too.
Continue doing that. Yeah, it's going to depend on hardware, and so Google has an advantage there, being vertically integrated, like you were about to show everybody. But
well, and here's two charts.
That even though they had the TPUs, their software wasn't up to snuff. The first couple of versions of Gemini were actually a little bit of a swing and a miss, even though they had the hardware. So yeah, they can get better margins out of it once they get a superior software product going.
And here's two charts that just sort of demonstrate how well the Gemini team. You can call it marketing, you can call it product, you can call it whatever you want, combination of all of it, but you're really seeing some serious growth out of Gemini. Most of the users are new users within the last year, and you can see that they're actually growing at a faster rate than in GPT in terms of percentage. Now, those are obviously different numbers. GPT still has the lion's share, which we can see on this chart. GPT still controls about 70% of the generative AI traffic. But that red chunk, it's getting bigger pretty quick. And with Gemini 3.0 coming out, you've got people like Benioff coming around and saying, I'm never using OpenAI again. Gemini 3.0 is the shit.
And that's what I was just saying. I don't believe him. If OpenAI makes a better model, he'll use that.
Switching costs are low.
So yeah, switching costs are insanely low. But there certainly was a cohort of, shall we say, kids who were ahead of the curve on ChatGPT and were using it to cheat on their homework, right? And the adults didn't know about it, and the kids all did. They are ChatGPT users for life. They're a really probably 3, 4, 5 year cohort there. Google et al. Can fight back against that. That is not a moat that can never be attacked or breached. That is a very small moat. But yes, you established buying patterns in middle schoolers and teenagers, probably to their detriment overall in their lives, by making it so they didn't learn anything. So maybe you have a less valuable user overall over their lifetime. But that being said, they probably own those kids, and they're going to own those kids for a long time. But everybody else is still, like, everybody who's 30 when ChatGPT came out, they're still trying to figure out which ones they like. Right. Everybody who's 45 is like, you mean I can't just Google it? Right. So, this guy Mark is like me right now. Yeah. Like, I'm not going back until they make something better, and then I'll skip.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know if the average sophomore in high school is going to stick with GPT for the rest of their life, because the switching costs are so low. So if there's a better product out there, they can just switch right away, which is both a good thing and a bad thing in the search 2.0 landscape. But you also have people that will age out of products. So a good example, this is Snapchat, where their entire demographic is 14 to 26-year-olds, and then people stop using the product.
Always has been, always will be.
Yeah, and I think GPT might be one of these products where, from what I've been told, it tells you what you want to hear a lot, and it's more companion oriented, where it seems like Google is making more of the serious level product that performs and does what you want it to do, whereas OpenAI seems a little bit more recreational. But also, we've got lots of years ahead of us for Google to expand on this lead. If OpenAI can't figure out how to make their unit economics work, and they're constantly in question of being able to pay their bills,
Yeah.
and they're still in a nonprofit state and being sued by Elon, like they're just going to have a hard time, I think, retaining talent and being able to innovate on this level and get a sustainable lead over Google in terms of models.
Well, they're part of their problem, and it's the puzzle they have to solve, but it's not necessarily a problem. But we can look at it that way because Google's vertically integrated, and they have TPUs, and they can make their own silicon. So Google can basically make do you know what an ASIC is, right? For people who don't know what an ASIC is, it is a piece of silicon that is designed to do one task and one task only, and do it very, very well. You would not use an ASIC in your computer because the ASIC might be designed to just display the color red on your screen, and it's going to do that better than any other processor ever, and it's going to do it with the least power, and it's going to be as cheap as possible to manufacture. But that's all it's ever going to be able to do, is just put red on your screen. Well, that's not useful to anybody who's not interested in looking at red. For people that want to see a whole bunch of colors, they're going to need GPUs, right? That can do a whole bunch of different things. GPUs have been used to do not just graphics, but physics and lots of other problems, not up to, and then also including the encryption work necessary to do cryptocurrencies. Now, I made a very specific and very low level example of just displaying the color red. But what if you designed a chip that all it did and all it could do was run an LLM? You couldn't make it show graphics. You couldn't have it do physics. All you could have it do was run an LLM. That's all it was good for. Well, Google can make those because they can make their own TPUs, they can design them to use the least amount of power possible. Where on the GPU side, just to turn the thing on requires a certain amount of power that's being wasted. Thermal waste also has to be cooled, and all that is waste that costs the same query. So for the same query, people using GPUs have a possibility, at least, to have a higher cost to provide the same answer that a more refined and laser focused silicon like a TPU could provide an advantage on.
Yeah, and here's the breakdown that what better way to get a breakdown other than Google AI mode here. But this is breakdown of TPUs versus GPUs. So following in what Dougie said, GPUs have more of a general use case, but they use more energy, whereas TPUs and ASICs in general have a more customized, co-developed solution, and that's where you're getting lots of benefit from Broadcom. Their stock was up 12, 13% today. And these customized chips are going to have either a speed and or an efficiency specific advantage. Otherwise, the company's not going to use them. If you design your own chip and it ends up being less efficient than the NVIDIA chip, you're just going to buy the NVIDIA chip and pay your NVIDIA tax and move on. So, yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And here's actually a clip. I think this would be a good time to show it. Here's a good clip of, let's see. I think I've got a clip here. He's not even a YouTuber. Okay. This is a clip of Jensen talking about TPUs and giving them mad respect. And this is not something that Jensen does often, where he is giving his competitors praise like this.
Google is a big GPU customer. If you look at, and Google is a very special case.
Right.
I mean, we just have to, show respect where respect is
sure.
really deserved. I mean, a TPU is on TPU 7,
Yes.
right? And so, and it's a challenge for them as well, right? And
What is your reaction to that clip?
I need to up my glasses game.
You got to get some red ones.
Yeah.
And we just saw today too that, we talked about it near the beginning of the podcast, but Meta is now going to be using some TPUs to do some of their training. So you're seeing Google actually turn into somewhat of an AI infrastructure company here. So a lot of the CapEx that they're spending now is them just buying the digital future for the next decade or two.
Yeah. How are they making their chips? I mean, look, NVIDIA is sold out of every single chip that they can get TSM to build for them. Where is the silicon coming from to build the TPUs? Who is actually fabricating them?
It's still TSM.
Is it Applied Materials? I know Sundar used to work there. So is it Applied Materials?
It's still TSM is the fab manufacturer, but they're working with Broadcom to actually co-design them.
So the whole world is still dependent on TSM. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was almost thinking, if there's an opportunity to get some exposure outside of the OpenAI NVIDIA platform, think like Wintel, right? Back in the 90s and 2000s, like OpenAI and NVIDIA are Windows and Intel, and you're looking for just someone else, right? But
now,
I think is still stuck with TSM.
Well, that's eventually the goal, is to be able to diversify that supply chain, be able to have companies like Intel be able to make the highest level chips, which is why you saw some public sector activity around there, but also having the highest level chips being produced at the fab here in Arizona, and be able to diversify some of that risk away from a land invasion of Taiwan. I think everyone recognizes that would be the black swan event for the AI trade, is if China successfully takes Taiwan. We'll have bigger problems at that point to discuss, but would not be good.
Well, if we considered AI dominance to be a existential threat to the United States, so we get to that, the slide we had earlier where we have to win the AI race. If China feels like they're far enough behind, they'll just, flip the chessboard over and invade Taiwan, and there goes the U.S. supply of what's building their tokens for them.
Exactly. Yeah, they've been working like crazy to get that TSM plant up and running. They're now finally they're producing I think it's the 3 nanometer chips now at the Arizona plant. So it is up and running. It's not a well-oiled machine like the fab in Taiwan is. What they're doing is very, very complicated and takes lots of experienced staff members. It's very, very specialized, but they are doing it here in Arizona. And they're going to continue to invest in that.
Well, I mean, I know the investment's going in. I'm just wondering if China is going to allow themselves to lose without saying, no, you know what, this is our last chance. We have to do it. We have to take our risk. We have to take it now.
Maybe, yeah, maybe more of a geopolitical question. I made a few memes here. One of them is, ChatGPT.
That one was hilarious. I love that one.
I had these after a few drinks, or I made these after a few drinks the one night. Gemini 3.0 trained on TPUs, just absolutely steamrolling the bus. And then the classic Vince McMahon, the first slide, for those who can't read it. Google Ads AI mode and AI overviews, search queries and revenue continue to grow. So that was what we were seeing in the first half of the year. And then in August, we got the DOJ ruling saying that Google's going to keep Chrome. And then we had all of the LLM competitors start to build Atlas and Comet on top of Chromium. And then you've got Gemini 3.0 taking the lead, Gemini gaining market share, and they were trained on TPUs using GCP. And then, this week it was also announced that they're going to be slipping ads into Gemini app itself. So if you used AI overviews or AI mode on the computer, you are still getting ads there. They've integrated that about a year ago, but now they've actually got ads within the Gemini app itself. So they also beat ChatGPT into getting ads integrated. GPT still does not have a network set up for that. So if you are trying to sell ads, say I was Nike and I wanted to sell ads on ChatGPT, you can't do it right now. They don't have it set up in a way that allows you to be able to advertise on the platform.
Well, good. They're a not-for-profit.
All right, so here's the big re-rating event with the closing of the DOJ risk and re-rating of search disruption, which clearly was overblown at this point, along with cloud growth and TPU proving its worth. All of that enabled over $1 trillion in market cap to be added. I think, once again, since I made this slide, that number is probably closer to 1.5 trillion of market cap being added.
I got to call a little BS here.
Okay.
None of this stuff had anything to do with the market deciding that it was time to buy Google. That was one company's decision. And
okay. What did you think is driving the rally here?
Berkshire.
But they were already
announced that they bought, and then it was Katie bar the door. Everybody started racing to buy Google. Before that, this like everything you have here is right, and I say all this to say, first of all, fantastic job on your thesis here and finding this before Berkshire found it. But I just find it hilarious that no one else saw it or wanted to see it until Berkshire gave the go. Or maybe they all saw it, but they weren't going to put their money on it because they were afraid of being in the PayPal of big tech until they saw Berkshire's in. And then, okay, now we can go.
Yeah, I think there's an unwritten rule when you're managing funds in the B billions of dollars that you probably shouldn't put a lot of eggs in the basket where there's an ongoing DOJ risk and search disruption happening at the same time. So I think a lot of fund managers just stayed away from it because it's hard, honestly, to justify to your client, oh yeah, I put 20% of our fund in Google, which you pay me 2 and 20 for, and here I am earning my money putting it into a company that, imagine if the DOJ trial went the wrong way or search did get disrupted. Their clients would have been all over their ass telling them about how obvious both of those things were. And, you should have known better. So you had all these different companies and fund managers that were essentially sidelined from a company that we all know is high quality, but it had these two overhangs on the stock. So when the DOJ risk went away and search proved itself out, you had a green light event, a clearing event for all these funds that were underweight to buy back in. And that's why I had some call options, because I knew that 16 PE was not going to stay put for forever. And that eventually, that money was going to come back into the company. I think at this point in time, Apple had double the PE of Google, because Apple was sitting around 35, 36 PE and Google was sitting at 16. And it's kind of hard to say why Apple should have double the PE of Google when some of the concerns were pretty overblown.
But no one will ever leave the iPhone, bro. It doesn't matter how good the product is on Google. They'll never switch to Android.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, though, numbers have to matter.
I'm being sarcastic if that's not
Yeah.
coming across.
Well, just for those who don't understand why I feel that way, Google, if you look at Apple, if you look at their numbers, their growth has been pretty lackluster, especially relative to some of the numbers that Amazon, Google, and Meta have put up in Microsoft. I mean, Apple's really fundamentally struggled the most. So it's kind of tricky to justify why they get the premium PE. And here is a clip of Sundar. At the time, this was back in May, so about 6 months ago on All In, he did an interview with the very brilliant David Friedberg, and they asked him directly about search. Here's what they said.
They're getting complete answers. They're engaging with AI systems in a way that they traditionally didn't do with the classical search interface. Is Google at risk of being truly disrupted from AI? Is the core search business, which the ad revenue in search is about a $200 billion run rate out of $360 billion of your total revenue, most of your profits. And it seems like Google's in a really challenging quandary where if you disrupt yourselves too quickly, all of that revenue can go away, can be really impactful. So is Google being disrupted by AI at this moment, or is Google leading?
It's a good framework, good question to talk about. I've definitely, for almost a decade, one of the first things I did was to think of the company as AI first. It was very clear to us. We had Google Brain underway in 2012. We acquired DeepMind in 2014. 2015, when I became the CEO, I said, look, the technology is really evolving. The reason we were excited to approach our work as AI first is because we really felt that AI is what will drive the biggest progress in search. And so, I think even the last couple of years, I viewed this as an extraordinary opportunity for search. I think if you look at how much information means to people, I think each person is going to have access to information in a way they've never had before. So it feels very far from a zero-sum construct to me. And we are seeing it empirically when people are using search. Obviously, there are a couple of major things we have done with search. Transformers drove some of the biggest innovations in search with BERT and MUM, dramatically improved search quality. We launched AI overviews about a year ago. It's now being used by over 1.5 billion users in over 150 countries. It's expanding the types of queries people can type in. And we see it empirically. The nature of queries is expanded. So there are whole new use cases coming into search. We find for queries where we trigger AI overviews, we see query growth. And the growth continues over time. Getting the feedback from AI overviews, we are testing it in labs. There's a whole new dedicated AI experience called AI Mode coming to search. We'll speak about it more at Google I/O. And in AI mode, you can have a full-on AI experience in search, including follow-on conversational queries. And we're bringing our cutting-edge models there, where the models are actually working to answer your questions, using search as a real native tool, right? And there, the queries, people are typing in queries like literally long paragraphs, right? The average query length is somewhere 2 to 3 times. This is what we see in search as it existed 2 years ago.
That means the search
will respond. Search is always, from the outside, people look at it and say, search, kind of looks easy to do. The craft of search is very hard. Over 2 decades, I think we've had a real North Star of understanding what users want in search. And, you've been here, we're kind of a very metrics-driven company. We kind of know what works. Users are our North Star. And empirically, we see that people are engaging more and using the product more, right? So all that, to your question about innovator's dilemma, I think the dilemma only exists if you treat it as a dilemma, right? For me, all along in technology, you have these massive periods of innovation and you lean into it as hard as you can. It's the only way to do it. When mobile came, everyone was like, well, it's like you're not going to have the real estate, like how will ads work, all that stuff. Mobile was a transition which ended up working great. I can give great examples, right? Like TikTok has come in. YouTube has thrived since the moment TikTok has come in, right? And it was a whole new format. We did shorts when we launched shorts. Shorts absolutely didn't monetize anywhere near long form, but we just leaned into the user experience. And over time, when we figured out monetization to follow. So, to me, you don't think about it as a dilemma, because users, you have to innovate to stay ahead, and you kind of lean in that direction.
It's like one of the original principles of Google, follow the user, all else will follow.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think the Google is dead disruptor narrative has, as you point out, been kind of repeated a number of times. Today, people are pointing specifically, and I appreciate your points about there's new search experiences coming. The search experience, it sounds like, is going to evolve.
Oh, yeah.
As people look at standalone apps, they compare Gemini as a standalone app to ChatGPT, to the Meta experience. The stats that came out in the recent court testimony that had some data revealed from March. I don't know where the data came from, but it said the Gemini AI app had 350 million monthly users compared to ChatGPT at 600 and Meta AI at 500. Is that the wrong way to think about it, that the Gemini standalone app isn't the future or the AI bet that Google's making?
They basically already answered that second question that Friedberg was following up on, which, we've seen a huge growth in Gemini app usership since then and the improvement to the model. But I think the important part of the question, the first question that Sundar answered was users are the North Star. So if you make a product and can lean into a product that people will continue to want to use, then the monetization part will take care of itself. It's almost like when Alex Karp said, our business plan is to take the whole market. We'll figure out the monetization later, and it will be, portion of the value that we create, but we'll provide the product that the users want. And once we've got the users, the rest will follow.
Yep. So we've been brushing up against that topic that you and I actually were tweeting about a little bit in the promo for this. I probably should have saved all of it for this discussion. But why the hell is Google going to throw a lifeline to Apple? Just crush them.
You're talking about helping them fix Siri because they've had issues for a long time with Siri.
Don't even let them run Gemini. Not only should you reverse the payment that you're paying for search, you need to start collecting for them to run their searches to Gemini, because they have no AI products, they have no AI strategy, and Tim is resigning. I don't know who they're going to get that's going to push it back up and get it going hardcore again. But so I don't understand why you don't step on the throat of your enemy when they're down.
Yeah, so it's a good question. Why give them the LLM to use to begin with to make the iPhone experience better? And I think the reason that you would do it is because you're not going to kill Apple, right? That's just not going to happen.
Died before.
Well, look, if you look at their balance sheet, though, and their net income and the iOS App Store, how much money services makes and at what margin, and the fact that their developer platform is all there, I think the idea that if you didn't throw them a lifeline, you could step on their neck, I'm not sure about that, because as is pointed out here by Lackability, you could pretty easily replace Siri with Perplexity, OpenAI, Claude, and with LLMs being the commodity, they didn't necessarily have to pick Gemini. They could have used a different frontier model to improve the iPhone user experience and to improve Siri. The fact that Google is giving it to them for $1 billion, first of all, that's revenue. But second of all, it sets the table that iPhone users will now be Gemini users. It gets them using Gemini more frequently and can help them win market share. And it also dictates the future partnership. So if iPhone continues to be dominant which I think for quite some time, and at least in North America, it's going to be a very relevant product. You have the future built on top of Gemini. So anything like personal assistance, speech to text translation, Apple AirPod translations, like language translations, any of those horizontal application layers that are being used on the mobile device itself that they want to build, they'd rather build it with a partner like Google, who they know is going to be around for the next 10 years and is going to execute on it well. Because all that Apple cares about is that when you use your iPhone, that the product works. If you call on Siri to do X, Y, and Z task, you just want it to work. You don't care who's powering it. Like, it doesn't matter to the Apple user which LLM is doing it. So they want to make sure that they're delivering the best experience. And Google wants to make sure that they're retaining users. So that's where you have like this symbiotic relationship where Apple gets to deliver the experience, Google retains the users.
Maybe. I just can't hate it. I just can't hate that strategy enough. It's like, well, Apple decided to sit on their hands, not do any CapEx, and they're just going to have the buyer build dilemma. And I guess they're neglecting they've decided to buy. And
Right.
if they do, well, then stop selling them search or stop buying search from them. Say, hey, look, this dynamic has fundamentally reversed. You need us now a whole lot more than we need you. I mean, Google could buy Perplexity and then Apple can't buy it. I mean, like they could play Go with Apple, kill them off, and let Android finally ascend to the throne it's always meant to wield. The only reason the market thinks iPhone is good is because everyone thought it was good for a long time. You know as well as I do, Android is far superior.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that Apple didn't actually go out and do a deal with GPT for Siri earlier on. And I'm also surprised that they didn't buy Perplexity. I thought that would have been a really good buy. Apple has the cash. For whatever reason, they decided not to invest it. Or maybe Perplexity did get an offer and they shut them down. I'm not sure, but I think that would have made sense for them to just buy out Perplexity and have Perplexity, like just blow up Siri, hit delete on it, get rid of it, and just have Perplexity do everything AI related on the phone. I thought that would have been a good strategy.
I still don't. By the way, I don't like Perplexity either. I do have it. I have used it. I was an investor. Fortunately, that whole thing I was involved in got unwound. Like the shares that were being given to the SVP or the SPV somehow didn't clear, and so everyone's money got returned. But I'm so glad because it was almost like a buy then research type of thing. Because like when you get invited to these, sometimes you're like on the clock, right? It's just like we have an unlimited number of people who want to get in on this.
Right.
You have 3
So
days.
What was it, like a flight that they oversold? There was 300 tickets on the plane and they sold 400 flights.
Or more like the company that was handling this ended up with no tickets on the flight at all. So they had to send everyone's money back, which was fine. I bought more Apptronic with it, but
another company that Google owns a lot of is Apptronic, the robotics company, and they're partnering with Google DeepMind. So think of Google DeepMind as the brain and Apptronic being the hardware supplier. So they've got a partnership, and they just raised another round pretty recently. I think it was about $400 million that they raised. So they're also going to be taking robotics really seriously. And even Demis made some mentions here recently about DeepMind. And shout out to Brandon. He sent me this. DeepMind hired former Boston Dynamics chief technical officer, Aaron Saunders, as the VP of their hardware for DeepMind. So he's going to be really responsible for driving a lot of the innovation that comes with DeepMind X Apptronic.
And the CTO, folks, is the person behind all the value. Like for as much as a lot of folks that we talk to a lot are Palantir fans and Alex Karp fans, Sairam Sanchar is the guy making the thing that Alex Karp is selling.
Exactly. Yeah. Product development for sure. While we were on the iPhone and, that discussion here, I threw in this slide just as sort of a reminder to talk about this. Google does have their own phone. And from what we're seeing, it looks like Pixel is starting to get a pretty decent edge on iPhone itself. Now, is it a compelling case?
Really? Because I've always considered it just like the reference board for like Samsung to trick out, right? Like I've mostly always had Samsung Android devices.
Now, Samsung makes a good product, but Pixel has really been stepping up their game lately. And I think it should be mentioned here somewhere in the episode, the Play Store does get generally about the same amount of in-app purchases, that 30% fee that apps pay to the Google App Store, the Apple App Store. Play Store gets that as well. So if you have an Android device and you're playing Candy Crush and you make an in-app purchase, that's money in Google's pocket. So they do also own this section of mobile where they own the toll booth to all of the apps. And I know, Doug, your big thing is the flip phones, and I think Android has embraced that a little bit more. Do you want to talk about the flip phones at all? So sell it to me like you sold it in Miami. Why would I want one of these?
Okay, well, you're 30 years old, so your eyes haven't started to go yet. Mine have. I have more. So now I have more real estate. So this is roughly the size of an iPad mini, but it's that thick. I don't know how well this is coming across. So it is only a few millimeters thicker than an iPhone when it's folded up and you have your case on it, because we all have the lens thing sticking out. But the other thing that everybody hates is the low batteries on their phones. Well, when you have a larger device, you have a larger battery just by volume. So you have more battery life. I haven't seen what the trifold Samsung is going to be like, but that battery is going to last forever. If you have, like, for example, do you have an iPad, Austin?
I know
that thing has like 4 days of battery life.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. And your phone has, half of a day. If you charge overnight, it has maybe it has 18 hours of battery life, right? Not for an iPhone. But right. The iPad somehow has 4 days of battery life. Well, same principle. The larger the device, the larger battery you can put into it. So for everybody who complains about their batteries dying all the time, buy a bigger friggin' phone. It's got a bigger battery in it. Not to mention you have a bigger screen. How do most people consume what they're doing right now? Watching video. Is it on TV? That's actually increasing on YouTube, but most people are still watching stuff on their phone. They're watching Netflix on their phone. They're watching all this other stuff on their phone. Which is a better experience? A 16:9 screen the size of your palm, or a big freaking or a larger screen that you can unfold and watch on?
Yeah, that same principle is going to apply to games as well. But it's also
gaming. Yeah,
it's also going to apply to like work devices. So, sometimes in the field, having a phone doesn't do the trick. If you've ever tried to like update a spreadsheet on your phone, it doesn't work. A lot of websites, if you like, their mobile app might be unusable, but if you go to the website, they might not have built out a mobile equivalent. So you might actually just be looking at a website designed for a laptop. So it gives you the optionality. Yep. Yeah, and the text is tiny. It's too hard to click on things. So the optionality of having, if your phone is closed, you've just got the front half of it. But if you need that bigger screen, you just open it up and boom, there it is. So I think that's really cool.
I probably only use my phone in open mode half the time. Like half the time it's in normal phone mode. Like no, a person who just briefly glanced at me would not recognize that I have a foldable phone because I'm just using it like everybody else is. But I have that additional capability when I want it. Which brings up a question: why did the iPad never get a cellular modem built into it? Well, okay, they did get a cellular modem built into it because they all have wireless connections. Well, they don't all have them, but you can get them with 4G, 5G service, right? Mobile service in them. But they just didn't put a phone modem in there, which is arguably the easiest and probably smallest part to put in.
Well, do you think it was because people probably just didn't want to pay an additional line on their phone plan, like to Verizon or AT&T?
Yeah, but you didn't have to. You can take an old phone right now that doesn't have a SIM card in it and use it as a smart device on your Wi-Fi.
Well, I think that's just the thing though, because like normally when you're using an iPad or some sort of tablet device, you are on Wi-Fi because you're at home, so you can just use WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever it is if you want to call.
Yeah, but still, when you're out walking around with it, like if it's in your backpack or something, you have your earbuds in, just you're taking calls anyway, like, right? Or I mean, to me, it's just it would have been a very easy thing to put a phone in a giant device, a very, very large device. You could put the phone doesn't get any bigger, or the phone device electronics don't get any larger because you put a larger form factor in there. It's all connected to a Bluetooth earpiece anyway.
Yeah.
And it's on the cellular network because you've got 4G and 5G connectivity. Okay, rant over. So I've always just bought like the cheapest iPads I could get. Android tablets are not as good as iPads.
I'm not a tablet guy, so I can't relate. But if it's all right with you, we can keep it rolling and move on to YouTube.
Yes, keep rolling. You got Austin brought the heat today.
This has been months in the making here. So this is a post where I summarize my thoughts on YouTube, and I think people are really underestimating YouTube. People know that it's a big platform and it gets lots of watch time, but I think the magnitude of that does get overlooked. So one of the reasons that I think YouTube is awesome, which you guys are watching the show right now on it, is the diversity of types of content that you can actually get. If there is a live music set that I want to listen to, I can find it. Stand-up comedy from really any comedian in the world, with their podcast or stand-up itself, you can find it. You've got sketch comedy, you've got how-to videos, you've got educational content like Khan Academy. If you are looking to like do a simple repair at your home or like change your oil, there's how-to videos on that. You've got news coverage, you've got live events, you've got stock market coverage. You've got Amit Kukreja doing market open, market close live streams. You've got the Milkman developing an entire community around, just looking at markets and
line of cookies.
Yeah. And all of this is creating really precise but fragmented communities for where people can really find the precise thing that they care about. So like their specialized thing that so say you're really, really into NFL, you can find dozens of YouTube channels that are talking just about NFL breakdowns. So watching all 22 film, talking about quarterbacking, talking about how Saquon Barkley is awesome and why he's awesome. You can watch NFL Sunday Ticket. You can buy movies on YouTube. So if you are looking for High School Musical and you're looking to just watch it tonight, you can buy it for $4. It's online. Basically any video is on demand for $4.
Sweet baby Jesus, you can also spend money to buy all of this ad free.
Yeah, ad free. So
that probably will not be the future, but it is the present. And thank
Now,
God.
the reason I say that it's the crown jewel of content is because of that range and the fact that these are really, really big categories. So you're again running into a network effect where if Dougie and I are trying to start a video streaming live stream channel, there's really only one game in town. Like you're not watching this on Vimeo right now, and you're not watching it on Facebook Live. You're watching it on YouTube because that's where the eyeballs are. And if you're a user, you're not going on Facebook Live and typing in Google Deepdive. Like you're going to YouTube and typing that in. So you have a natural network effect there, where you're getting specialized content, and it has a recommendation engine too. So if we're sitting here watching The Compound and Friends, followed by All In, followed by BG2 Podcast, it's going to make sense that probably the next thing that we're going to get is another podcast related to business, finance, and politics and technology, because YouTube knows what content you like. So you've got that flywheel there where you can subscribe and become a regular recurrent user, but they also know what type of content you want advertised to you. So say, for example, you're into gym content and you want to follow some fitness influencers and see what their workouts look like, what their meal plans look like, day in the life of whatever it is.
Well, that's your Instagram competitor right there. Boom. That's
and what better way to advertise than, an in-video ad roll from Gymshark directed specifically at their niche audience. Gymshark would never do an ad on NFL Sunday on CBS saying buy Gymshark, because the percentage of the population that is actually interested in that product is lower. But if you wanted to be really efficient with your advertising dollars, you would go directly to the fitness niche and advertise specifically to that audience. So within all of these micro communities that are within YouTube, you're getting really, really precise affiliate marketing that I don't think can be replicated by any other business except for Instagram. Keeping it rolling here. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you're hitting on the premium. So the content creators have now become so proficient, if once they gain enough following, that they actually don't even need the ad revenue anymore. They will make their content so spicy that they don't receive ad revenue. They're getting paid directly from the advertisers to do the read built in. So now YouTube has replaced radio. It's completely replaced talk radio.
100%. Yeah, because
completely replaced talk radio.
You can get money from, if you're the creator, you can get money from the advertisement that YouTube places. You can get money through affiliate marketing, which is your, sign up for my Factor meals and use promo code Austin15, you get 15% off. And then the creator would get a portion of that. But then the third category that you just hit on, which really kills radio in general, is you set up a deal within the video to do an ad read for, say, Squarespace. Squarespace, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, please reach out. But you've got all these different ways of advertising to this audience. It's such a wonderful business model. And as I mentioned here, you've got the Costco feedback loop, because the more platform or the more content that comes onto the platform, the more valuable YouTube Premium becomes. And the more people that have YouTube Premium, the more YouTube can afford to continue to pay creators to create more content. The same exact cycle exists with Netflix as well, where the membership becomes more valuable the more content they put on the website, and the more people using the website itself, the more content they can create.
Really? Because we've seen the quality of content drop pretty precipitously
On Netflix?
On Netflix in the last several years. With a few of my favorite exceptions.
I was going to say.
With a few of my favorite exceptions. And I still like Netflix very much as a business, but I would like to see them make less content. For example, I would rather see them like commit every dollar that they were going to use to make original content for the next 3 years into making sure they secure the best bid for Paramount.
Sure, yeah, and you can make that case that they've leaned into their pricing power a little bit and kind of have pulled back on content. And they're trying to bring a lot of that in-house. I think they're trying to avoid the scenario where they have all this content but don't own any of it.
They're trying to get vertical integrated.
Right. Yeah, they don't want to be held up for ransom by the people who own the content.
But they still have problems. But YouTube, and I actually did have some notes here on YouTube versus Netflix. But one of the things we've seen in probably the last, what would you say, 18 months or so, is the reason everybody loved Netflix and that everybody loved SaaS, and because it was subscription based. People forget to cancel their subscriptions. That money keeps rolling in every week. Advertisement-based TV died, or is dying. Certainly the newspaper has died. But now it seems that investors are valuing advertising more than subscriptions. Is that just because, we went so far off one way, now we don't think that's valuable anymore, now we want this other pot of money because ad rates can go up and down faster than we can raise prices on the customers for the subscriptions? Whereas in the background, we can just raise prices as much as we want and increase our margins.
I think for market share purposes, they're approaching it with the dual strategy of both ad tier and subscription tier. Obviously, Wall Street's going to like it better if you have the subscription tier because it's more predictable.
I think Wall Street is giving a premium to the ad tier now. I mean, because that's, as Netflix investor, that's what everyone's excited about. That's what everyone's watching, the metric for the advertising revenue now. No one cares about how many subs there are. They're only looking at the ad revenue.
I mean, I certainly care. The more people that are on YouTube and the more people that are using Google search, those businesses send traffic to each other. I don't think people.
But they don't do that in Netflix, though.
Correct. That's right. But between YouTube and Google, Netflix doesn't have anywhere to send it to because it's mostly people watching on TV, whereas YouTube, it's TV and the computer and mobile.
Yep.
So YouTube has a natural advantage there too. This is Netflix versus YouTube. Now, Google YouTube is the red bar here. Netflix is the black bar. This is just YouTube ads. YouTube ads have almost usurped Netflix revenues total for the company. This does not even include YouTube Premium. So what we're seeing here, this run rate of $37 billion a year, that doesn't even include Premium, wow, which is estimated to be, $20-25 billion a year. Only growing. And this is business that's, CAGRing at about 20% each year. And then here's the US TV time market share. And you can see that YouTube has actually been picking up market share here. I know there's been some noise around Netflix, with the wokeness and some of the stuff that's been described as content for children, and you've got Musk making some noise about it. I'm not too worried about Netflix, but I am happy to see that YouTube continues to gain market share here in this area because it's obviously a really valuable space to own.
Yeah, a lot of people might remember or might not that Netflix was my pick for all of 2025. And I mean, anytime you hit an all-time high, great. And we got a stock split, like they've done well, but YouTube is competing the pants off of them. And, if I had to decide which one I cancel first, I'm canceling Netflix long before I cancel YouTube. And then somebody else also mentioned, YouTube also comes with YouTube Music. And you and I have talked about that. Why does Spotify exist?
Yeah, exactly. As someone who is very bullish on YouTube, I cannot invest in Spotify because all they would really have to do, and I think Apple Music has this, I'm not sure if YouTube does, but the switching cost for Spotify is like my playlist in my recommendation engines. Now the recommendation engine is going to be different no matter what, but if you have all your playlists on Spotify and you don't want to abandon them, if they can make it an easy solution to just zoom over your playlist from one platform to the other, I think YouTube has a lot of ground to gain here. And this is just total traffic share of the internet. You can see that between Google and YouTube, that's 1/4 of all internet traffic. It's just those two websites. Alphabet owns the top 2 websites on the internet, just so people understand what that means. Google is the internet. Satya Nadella last week said there is no such thing as the open internet. There is the Google internet. So Google really owns the space when you look at search, Chrome, YouTube, and all of the tools that they provide. It's just really incredible how much space they own. And then on the right-hand side is the, again, the TV time, the share of time spent with the TV in the US. You can see Disney is still the top there at 11%. And YouTube is double digits, followed by NBC and Paramount, and Netflix at 8%. I expect that this market share will continue to grow over time for the digitally native companies, which is what we saw on this slide here. These numbers are as of April of 2024. These numbers here are a little bit more updated as of the first quarter. So you can see YouTube continuing to gain market share, and I think Netflix will see that as well.
I just wanted to show some folks, if you can share my screen, I just wanted to show some folks what the YouTube Music interface is like. And yes, I am a huge K-pop Demon Hunters fan. Look how popular this is. Even for YouTube Music, which most people would probably still not even know exists, even though they pay for YouTube Premium. This song got 1.5 billion plays.
For those listening, yeah, it's Golden, which is kind of the most popular track. But these other tracks, they're getting hundreds of millions of views.
Hundreds of millions of views. And this is on a platform that no one knows exists for the most part. I can't imagine what these numbers are on Spotify. So anyway, Netflix has a future. But look, here's all the liked music you have. Well, that gets turned into a playlist, right? I mean, you can make your own playlists. People think you can't. Like my bike riding stuff, stuff from my dad. These are all the libraries. So one of the cool things about YouTube Premium is you already paid for it, or YouTube Music is you already paid for it. If you want to add a song to your library, you just click on it and then add it to your library. You don't have to actually pay for it. And one thing I've noticed that they've started adding content creators that we might watch for podcasts to the YouTube Music platform as well. So here's this good-looking guy right here.
And you've also got the entire shorts business built around this. So when TikTok really started blowing up, we heard Sundar in the interview earlier talk about TikTok and shorts. They were able to get YouTube's recommendation algorithm to the point that YouTube shorts are actually now monetizing at a better rate than the long form content. And these shorts, I've spent the last few days watching some shorts, like over the weekend. And man, some of these shorts just have hundreds of millions of views. They're doing big numbers, and I think that's adding more to the platform, especially with the demographic tailwind that we have with YouTube. So as most people might know, YouTube skews a little bit younger because it's mobile-based. And not just is it mobile-based, but that's also where a lot of their favorite content creators is on YouTube itself. So right now you have, younger folks who are growing up on the platform and will likely be on the platform for quite some time because it's that sticky and it's where all of their content is. As they grow up and get into their 20s, 30s, 40s, their purchasing power is going to continue to grow. So you have a long-term demographic tailwind where the user base of the company is going to get more and more money, and they're going to become more valuable customers. If you ask a group of high school students 30 years ago, what do you want to be when you grow up? A lot of them used to say astronauts. They all say YouTuber now. The irony is not lost
a lot
on
of
me.
work. They don't know what they're talking about.
The irony is not lost on me that we're sitting here, doing a YouTube live.
I follow a guy in the rocket stuff that I do, and he just kind of released a behind the scenes thing, and it's like I have 64 hours of video that I had to compress down into a 40-minute video. And he talks about writing his rough drafts and his second drafts and then doing all his videos. And it became just this whole thing to me, like, oh, he's making a movie every week, based on hours and hours and hours of just raw footage of cutting it together. So he's directing, producing, and editing of like a half-length feature film, writing it as well every other week. And I was just like, oh wow, that's the job all these kids think they want. I don't see any of them having that kind of grind,
but they can do it. The thing is that the opportunity is there. Like you have freelance and independent media who are able to come into the space and do exactly what they want. So previously, where you had a bunch of gatekeepers, whether it be in the music industry or the acting industry or comedy or what have you, or even just something like talking stocks, where we wouldn't have been able to do this 2 decades ago. Everyone would have had to jump on a phone call at the time that we designated, and they would have had to listen to that phone call. Now we can stream it whenever you want. It's on-demand content. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on the TV. You can do it on your iPad. And you don't need permission from anybody. If you want to post a comedy stand-up special and you want to do 1 hour and you want to record the set and upload it, you used to have to go through HBO. You used to have to go through Comedy Central. You don't have to do any of that shit anymore.
Now you can do it with an Android phone and a YouTube channel. No Apple required.
No Apple required.
Although their cameras are pretty good if you're making video.
The next thing I had for us here is Waymo. So
okay,
here we go. In the top left-hand corner is a chart that we covered on our first episode, but it is the cost of LiDAR coming down rapidly. So as the components for LiDAR come down, the big complaint is that the unit economics might not make sense for really expensive, clunky vehicles driving around. That cost is coming down. So not just the cost of the LiDAR equipment itself, but I've also got 2 other pictures there. One is the Zeekr. That would be the middle picture, this blue-looking car here. And then down below that is the Hyundai. So Waymo has actually partnered with a few different car companies now in order to produce cheaper robotaxis. So the Jaguars, it was estimated that it would cost between $250,000 to $200,000, which is pretty cost prohibitive. But these Zeekrs should be under $100,000. Same thing for the Hyundais. So they're also diversifying their supply chain from not just one manufacturer, Stellantis, but now to 3 different manufacturers. They're done making the Jaguar I-Paces, but these Zeekr machines are getting ready to roll out in a few different cities. They are already serving riders in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Arizona, Austin, Texas, Atlanta. They just went live in Miami. And then up next are going to be Dallas, Denver, Detroit, Houston, Vegas, London, Tokyo, San Diego, DC, San Antonio, Orlando, Nashville, New York City, Boston, Philly, Seattle, Buffalo, and New Orleans. Then after that, they just announced last week, which I threw in here, Minneapolis, Tampa, and sorry, New Orleans is twice there. But the point is you're seeing them scale pretty rapidly to lots of different cities. They're showing that they have a good, repeatable process for getting through the regulatory environment in each one of these localities. where they're working with local law enforcement, city councils, departments of insurance, and the departments of transportation.
They figured out the code on what they have to do.
Exactly.
To get those fixed. And they're also able to just show up and say, hey, we have done this before in this thing. We're kind of the experts in getting this done, Mr. or Madam, city council person. You don't need to be an AI expert for us to show you that this works, right? Like, we know how to get it validated. We know how to run you through the numbers, and we can do that. So they huge props to them on that, because that is a not insignificant piece of the puzzle, especially in the United States in our completely crazy litigious society.
100%. And they've got the insurance side of things solved. So Swiss Reinsurance, who is a reinsurer of excess and surplus policies, which, without getting too deep into insurance, no normal insurance company like Geico is going to insure an unproven technology like this. They don't have the actuary tables for it to submit filings to the Department of Insurance to improve. They have no idea whether the rate should be $1,000 a year per car or $5,000. And if they're wrong on that, they could potentially go insolvent, or you end up with giant rate hikes. Well, Swiss Re came out and said that we have a 90% reduction. This is at the bottom here. We've got a 90% reduction in crashes. So basically they're saying that the Waymo driver is already 10-fold times better than a human driver, which I think is an acceptable threshold to say, yes, this is definitely going to be useful to us, because not only do crashes cause lots of traffic, but you also have people losing their lives. 40,000 people a year dying in car crashes, not exactly ideal. And you have a lot of people who are going to get their time back from commuting. So, if you're spending 45 minutes to an hour every single day in traffic, having to babysit a wheel, gas, brake, and then occasionally making turns, you can reclaim all of your time back with self-driving. And that is an underestimated productivity gain that physical AI is going to bring to the table. When you are able to work on anything productive for those 30 minutes to an hour during your commute each way.
Or not even productive. That could be your leisure time during the day.
That too.
If that's your leisure and that's your chance to catch up on all your shows and stuff that you would normally say, I get home, I want to take off my work clothes and relax a little bit. I'm going to pop something on TV and relax on the couch, and then you don't go work out that day, right? Well, what if you just loosened your belt and popped on Landman while you were riding home?
Mm-hmm.
Well, now you got your chillaxing done while you're riding home from work, and now you're ready to go to the gym. How much better are all of our lives for that?
Yeah, fantastic technology. And just to mention it here, they're not super far along.
You can't own it yourself, though, right? No one is able to own their own Waymo. Is that
correct? Yeah. So that actually brings me to my next point, which is Toyota. So they're not super far along in the process, right? We haven't seen a prototype yet, but the idea is that Waymo is going to partner with Toyota to solve that OEM problem. Tesla obviously has the advantage here from the business sense that they can crank out cars and that you can actually buy a Tesla. The idea would be you could go to a Toyota dealership and you could choose between a Camry that, manual Camry, or a Waymo Camry. We'll see what that business model looks like. I think it could be a combination of, plus $10,000 for the sensors and maybe a subscription on top of it. Really early days there, but I think you'll see more partnerships made with the OEMs, because at the end of the day, Waymo is a software.
The reduction of sensors to the vehicles. I think the camera count went from 18 to 9, and the LiDAR devices went from 13 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, if they can prove that they don't need 16 and that 9 are sufficient, then get rid of them.
For reference, that's probably more sensors than an F-35 has. Although an F-35 costs slightly less than a Waymo. Oh, yeah. Come on. That was a good one.
Waymo. Waymo less?
Well, yeah. The F-35 costs less than the Waymo. Oh, my gosh. I mean, I'm not throwing out a Mick Kugrija level jokes here. Like, that was a good
one. But yes.
So did you see this Luminar company, this LiDAR company that was rolling with Volvo?
Well, they abandoned it, right?
Yep, rolled up operations, abandoned the contract, laid off a whole bunch of people, and we're like, peace, we're out.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have winners and losers, right?
You're going to have winners and losers, or is that indicative of market conditions where the LiDAR, like the producers of the LiDARs, they're getting competed, their margins are getting competed down to the point where they can't make money. And so while Waymo is benefiting by a lower unit cost in their economics, ultimately the supply chain is going to die because the producers can't supply it at the cost that they've signed contracts for.
No, it's going to be winners and losers. And the reason why is like, if you're involved at all in like making the sensors and producing for Waymo, Google cannot afford to have that part of the supply chain go bust. Like if you have 50 components that are required for the car and
okay, well, doesn't that eventually add back? So what you just said is no matter how expensive it actually is to make the LiDAR, Google will fund it because they have the cash. They can't afford to, it cannot be allowed to fail.
Correct.
But what we're seeing on the logistics and on the manufacturing side is, yeah, this stuff actually is more expensive than they've been selling it for. They don't have the margins to keep their production businesses in.
But that's one business. Company.
Well, if you Google search LiDAR company bankrupt, you get quite a few that went bankrupt in the last 3 years.
And how many LLM startups do you think are going to go bankrupt in the next 5? Like it's going to be largely winners and losers. Whoever has the product is going to win, and whoever doesn't, they're going to wither on the vine.
Yeah, but you're talking about hardware companies versus software companies. So I agree with you. Google is going to support their supply chain regardless. I just think it is a bit of a sleight of hand to say, oh, hey, look, all the prices of the LiDARs are coming down. The value, the price of the car is being reduced because LiDAR is finally benefiting from common economies of scale. At the same time, the actual companies that make the LiDARs are going out of business because there's no margin.
Well, yeah, it's getting
when they're fulfilling at the cost that they said they were going to, and it turns out they can't.
Yeah, I mean, if that specific business is getting commoditized, which is just manufacturing and shipping sensors and cameras, yeah, then that might not be a good business model. But luckily, that's not the business model that Waymo's involved in. They've built the driver, and they're going to monetize the driver, whether it's through OEM or robotaxi.
I'm just suggesting the car is not going to end up costing $40,000. It's still going to be $140,000 Decepticon.
I think it'll be lower than that, but we'll see. They've been a little opaque with the numbers in terms of like what it actually cost.
So the only place we can look at is, okay, well, how are their suppliers doing? Oh, they're all going out of business.
No, but their suppliers aren't going out of business. Other people's suppliers are going out of business. Like from failed projects like Cruise or what's the other company? Wave?
Yeah, it's Wave.
Wave, yeah.
What was the one that did the deal with the Mark Rober video where they the LiDAR company was sponsored the video for Mark Rober, and he was like showing how you could fool a Tesla into crashing into stuff because
that might have been Luminar.
That was one that just went out of business.
Okay, Luminar.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to dig into the whole controversy that was that video. I know that one.
Not trying to totally rehash that. just saying you can't say, oh, the prices are coming down and saying, yeah, and all the suppliers are going out of business.
Well, that's why they're going out of business, is because of that margin crunch that you just referred to. Oh, look at this. Zoe says that Rober has a Netflix show now. Interesting. Interessante.
Yeah, that's something Netflix is going to try to do, is buy up some Netflix, the big YouTube talent, give them, dependable contracts that are going to pay them. I don't know why YouTube won't do that, but I guess they're just trying to keep their platform fully democratic. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Part of me actually likes that. It's like, oh, I don't ever get, if I'm willing to compete, I'm playing by the same rules as Mark Rober, so he doesn't get preferential treatment over me. He just has taken it, he's won the game, but I'm playing it too, and we're playing by the same rules. That's very American to me, not the, oh, he gets special treatment. But that's also American. Once you've proven that you can deliver the goods and deliver the audiences, you get preferential treatment. Actually, I just got a text message. I gotta read this for a second. Sorry.
Yeah, you do your thing. Now, when it comes to Waymo rides, these numbers I printed out back in May. They had done 50,000 rides 9 months ago, 100,000 rides a week 6 months ago, 150,000 rides 4 months ago, 175,000 rides 7 weeks ago. So they're really scaling how many rides that they're doing. And then per week in February of this year, they did 200,000 rides. And then by May, they were up to 250,000 rides per week. So within about a year, from May of 24 to May of 25, they increased their rides per week by 5x. I can only imagine what that number looks like now. We're now 6 months past May, when that 250 number was released. And we've heard lots of positive commentary from the Uber CEO who is partnering with Waymo, that the Waymos that they have in the Austin and Atlanta markets are way more efficient. They provide a better user experience. Robots don't unionize. They don't take breaks. They work 24/7. They're always perfect, which is going to drive down the operating cost of insurance. Less accidents, lower insurance costs. And, there's also a liability portion there of running a taxi network, that it's not just the crunching of the plastic in the car and the property itself, but there's also the liability aspect that, if you actually make a mistake and, do some bodily injury and you're liable for that number can run up really quick towards, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million of liability if someone ends up in the hospital with a serious injury in an accident and there's negligence involved. The fact that Waymo hasn't had any accident like this at all, and that they've moved really slowly, the management of Waymo has reiterated multiple times that they really are evaluating and protecting their brand. That's why they haven't moved on to highway until very recently, is they wanted to be confident that they weren't going to have a PR mess. So Uber has been incredibly supportive, and they think that Waymo helps their business model, and that it provides a unique experience to them, not having to worry about tipping a driver, making small talk with the driver, or just generally worrying about their driving skills and risk tolerance at all. So we've heard lots of talk about Waymo can't scale, but as evidenced here on the previous slide, with all these different cities that they're announcing, they're definitely scaling, and we've got more cars on the way, and it's happening in real time.
They've got two things to scale, right? They've got to scale the number of cities that they're operating in, and they've got to scale the number of vehicles they have, because they can say, oh, we're operating in Atlanta and they have 14 vehicles, right?
Right.
And we know right now, because they're working with Uber, that Uber is basically backstopping all of the demand for the rides, and
it's aggregating.
Waymo is basically just they're just participating in the market to a small extent. I'm not sure that I love how they are rolling this out, because they have two problems to solve at the exact same time. But they've also proven pretty competent, so maybe they can do it. Maybe they can do it pretty seamlessly, and with Uber's help, they can make it not feel like there's some kind of supply shock to the up or downside that's going to affect them in a way like Tesla does, right? Tesla's running its own thing on its own app. It's geofenced, and in my mind, it's geofenced because they're trying to make sure they have a concentrated demand area where as they're trying to gain a bunch of rides that they're using as data for their regulatory framework that they're trying to build and get all those approvals. I'm sure they have to collect a whole bunch of data on that. And yeah, they have to maintain critical mass. So they have to keep all the vehicles and all the potential riders in a very small area to drive that demand high in that local area. Once they get that, then they can start expanding. And, it's been said many times, they have the ability to push the button and go live on all their vehicles. That's not actually what's going to happen. But I think that they've certainly ceded the regulatory race to Waymo. I think their and you and I have argued about this many times, I think their technology solution is better, but they have certainly ceded a very vital part, which is the regulatory race. Rachel, FSD ultimately wins. And in 30 years, Waymos are going to be operating with an FSD like camera system. They're not going to be using LiDARs though.
Jury's still out on that one.
All the sensors are going to come out, and they're going to be operated with a neural net. Maybe they're using LiDAR, maybe they're not, but they're going to be operating on a neural net and not a rule-based system for the driver. Because Google's good enough at that at code too, and they're good enough at AI, and they're going to write and develop a neural net that's going to do those things. And that neural net is going to be common in a lot of work in 30 years. It's not just going to be, two car companies racing each other.
All physical AI. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be used in all kinds of physical AI. Like the factory robots are not going to need LiDARs to move to drive the fork truck robot around, right? It's just going to do it visually the way we do it now. It's an acceptable level of risk for all the insurance companies right now to have someone with two eyes do it. Why would they not allow someone with 8 cameras to do it that point in 360 degrees? Now, granted, the public roads are their own level of hazards, and the public is also more paranoid about it. But the neural net design is ultimately what's going to win. Whether, how long it takes Waymo and Google to switch over to it, who knows? But Google has proven that they're a technology leader, and they're not going to find themselves in a position where Tesla AI or Grok owns all of the neural net and Google's just sitting there,
Well, they could have belt
with the Waymo in their hand and nothing to do. Like they're gonna be rolling in. Heck, they're gonna own part of SpaceX, and I guarantee you, the AI that's going to be used to drive Teslas around is going to be used to dock starships with one another for refueling and resupply missions.
Well, so the approach that Waymo has taken is belt and suspenders. So you could argue that the vision is the belt and that the LiDAR is the suspenders. And Musk will argue that, those two things have a conflict point that needs to be resolved. And it looks like Waymo has successfully been able to resolve that conflict point. But you could also just argue that it's simply a redundancy that they will get rid of at some point, but haven't, because we're so early innings on this neural net idea, and that they will eventually get rid of it, or they might just keep it there. But for now, they do not want to risk their entire brand being the safe brand.
If the costs sufficiently come down where Yeah, like every robot dog and all the devices end up with little lidars in them, you know, just like the Wi-Fi chip is now, right? Like if it becomes that ubiquitous, where a lidar sensor is as ubiquitous as a Bluetooth radio, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, everything is going to have lidar. You know, 6-7 years ago, that was not the case. The lidar was crazy expensive, and if you're trying to build vehicles that you're putting the entire suite of everything needed to operate it in, then you couldn't do it with lidar and have it priced for people to buy. You could have it priced for Google to buy, but you couldn't have it priced for the average consumer.
Now, circling back,
not to overly do this topic, as you and I personally have gone through it, folks. If you don't know, Austin and Dougie have gone through this.
Yeah, go back to episode 1.
Hours.
If you guys are curious about like the specific dynamics of Waymo versus Tesla and how we see that playing out, go back to the first episode. I've got a timestamp in there.
And then in your mind, multiply that by about 50, and that's how much Austin and I have actually gone back and forth.
It's been well covered. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the Uber partnership, which is confusing for a lot of people. Why would Waymo do it? To go back to that critical mass idea, there's 2 reasons that you would want to have your self-driving car on Uber's platform. The first is that they're a demand aggregator. So from the user experience, if there is only 20 Waymos in the entire city of Los Angeles, you would go to your Waymo app and order a Waymo, and you might not see it actually arrive at your doorstep until 45 minutes from now when one becomes available. So that creates a problem. You actually need enough cars in service at that time to be able to service the demand. Otherwise, the product gets significantly worse. It's a huge difference for the user from a car arriving at my house in 5 minutes versus 40 minutes from now. Uber helps that problem because you have, quite frankly, just more drivers on the platform. The second part of this is on the vehicle utilization side. So being on the platform itself is going to make sure that your car does not have as much deadhead time where, either you're waiting around waiting for a ride to be called, or because the market is so fragmented that you're now having to drive 30 minutes across town with no passenger in your car to get the next available ride. You want to avoid both of those situations where you're sitting around waiting for someone to request a ride, or B, having to go all the way across town, not getting paid for any of that. That's called deadhead. You can actually measure that. So I think that's something that folks should look into as well.
Yep.
For this one, Dougie, I think I'll toss it to you. Quantum. I just wanted to throw this slide in here. I won't purport to be an expert here on the Willow quantum chip.
Neither will I, bro.
You're the D-Wave investor. I thought you would have had this one on lock.
Yeah, D-Wave, not on Willow.
Okay.
I can paint a very view from 40,000 feet future for you.
So the idea is that this is going to be a large industry in 5 to 10 years. Lots of applications, military and civilian. And Google is right there in the mix.
So one of the main issues that airlines fail is they cannot make money on their routes, because figuring out the most efficient way to move people around and follow a map requires quantum computing. It cannot be done with brute force CPUs, digital binary CPUs. You have to use quantum computing for those algorithms. What we're going to see in the future is that all these LLMs and all these answer machines are Palantir, probably more like a Palantir than LLM, but whoever's doing your business logic is going to have access, going to require access to quantum computing for specific algorithms that it needs to execute. And those are probably going to be like things like optimization, logistics, any problem that's labeled as NP complete. Lots of research stuff too. If we want to optimize nuclear power reactors, quantum computing, if we want to get down to the nitty gritty and start doing like hyper local weather forecasting, that's going to require quantum computing. If you want to route really good AI taxis around, that's going to require quantum computing.
Now, there's also a security aspect to this as well.
And then there's the security aspect. And encryption for the DoD and signals intelligence and all that stuff as well. Because once it's broken, once RSA 256 is broken by quantum, then you're going to need quantum resistant algorithms, and then it means you're going to need quantum computers to do the decoding of those quantum resistant algorithms, because that just means they can't be brute forced. But that also means you're going to need a quantum computer to code and decode end-to-end all your secure transmissions. And those are not going down in a world where we have autonomous AIs and drones, where we have to communicate with the devices that are flying around and dropping bombs or shooting lasers, or supporting the soldiers on the ground. Think about did you see the Anduril helmet that they showed on Rogan?
Is this the one that they worked with Meta to design?
That they used with Microsoft. It was basically Microsoft had the contract and they were trying to HoloLens it and it didn't work, and so they're just like, no, please take over. No, so this is an Anduril product.
Okay, and I think I heard them talking about it. Basically,
or if you can find a clip, it's awesome.
It's going to be linked up all at the same time. So that I think Palmer said that, if you're 100 meters away from me on this post and I'm at a different location, we would all have like a synced time we would all have the same information if we're supposed to have the same information. Like it would all be synced and we would all basically have the same heads up display essentially. Is that the idea?
Yep. So me as a one soldier can have a full heads up display, but if you're in my squad and you're around the corner over there and you have a 90-degree view to mine, so you can see behind things that I am looking. So like a container, if I'm looking at like shipping containers and you're on the other side of those and you can see the back side of those shipping containers, well, now I can see through the shipping containers.
Right.
Okay. And then we have a drone overhead and it's beaming video down and it's looking in thermal and, all the other frequencies as well. So it's showing us what's inside the shipping containers. You see it and I see it. Right? All that is going to have to be encrypted because it's radio waves. Like anyone can intercept it. It's all going to have to be encrypted. And eventually it's all going to have to be quantum encrypted. So the market for quantum is going to be enormous. Get in while you can, this is not financial advice. Get in while you can. Some people are going to be leaders. Google is doing it, and that may be your way. That may be your chosen vehicle to invest in quantum and just say, yep, Google is my ETF that contains quantum. I'm good.
Yeah, you could do the same with IBM if you just wanted some exposure to, a real solid, stable company and didn't want to have to roll the dice there on actually generating future revenue from some of these smaller firms that have popped up that have lots of good technological promise, but haven't necessarily delivered any business results yet. I think that automatically will turn away a certain class of investor. But while we're on the other bets section,
yes, one point. So what the small quantum companies are able to do is they're able to say, we're quantum companies. This is our main business. You could have been a quantum worker at Google for the last decade and everybody laugh at you, right? You're going to the meetings. You're trying to get budget. You're trying to get allocation to what you're trying to do. and it's like, nope, you're not making revenue, you're not getting investment. Versus a company where what we do is quantum, you're getting 100% of that company's push behind you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but Google does have a
large corporation where I work at my undocumented oil company. Okay, I kind of know how this world works a little bit. If you're not the squeaky wheel or you're not the superstar, you're not getting.
I think it's a little bit different though than most, corporate cultures that, unless you're getting results, you sort of get forgotten about. Google has this deep culture, a lot, of incubating.
I agree. It's getting it back. I think it lost it for a while. It's getting it back.
I think they lost their focus on execution for 2022 and maybe 23, but they've never stopped investing in other companies. So a few other examples is not just Waymo, which they've led every round on, but they're also deeply invested in ASTS. They're also deeply invested in SpaceX. They lead most of the rounds for Apptronic. They even have a department called Google Ventures. There's hundreds of companies that they're invested in as small other bets. And they've always supported that. On one hand, people like Chris Hone, who I respect a lot, they'll tell you that, these projects are a cash burn and most of them go to zero. And he actually wrote a letter to Google management a few years ago saying, hey, this Waymo project, it's too expensive. We need to get rid of it and return to the core business. But, as you can see, a lot of these businesses, they end up, turning out to be just incredible businesses. And it looks like Apptronic is going to be one of them, SpaceX, AST Space Mobile, and the benefits that those investments will bring them. If you have the entire planet that's now more connected through, space satellites, bringing more connectivity to more people, you now have more users and more access points to actually use the product. If you don't have service or service isn't available to you where you live, and now it is available to you, that's just more users for Google, and they're more than happy to help fund those investments, especially when they're going up, which is, some of the bears have argued that some of the EPS gains aren't real because they're realizing market gains from SpaceX. But I think that's silly because is SpaceX going to slow down anytime soon in terms of how much money they're making? I don't think so. Golden Dome.
Okay. Do you really want me to go off on a rant on Golden Dome? Do we have time for that? It's 11:30. We got time.
We got time. What else
did I have left? The Golden Dome is a pipe dream.
But the spend is very real. Like there are going to be communications and defense.
No, it's a pipe. It is an absolute pipe dream.
Okay, break that down.
The Iron Dome is trying to defend the skies, the direct skies of an area the size of what, New Jersey? You cannot defend the skies of the continental United States, let alone the outlying territories, let alone the additional altitude you have to defend above the United States that you don't have to defend above Israel. So you start having a problem that is scaling volumetrically.
Yeah. Now I don't. When I hear Golden Dome, I don't think of like an actual dome. Maybe the verbiage isn't super clear. What I think of is us launching, technology into space that gives us visibility and data advantages, and lets us know first. So if there's a weather event, we know first, and it doesn't
matter. Hypersonics, it doesn't matter.
Maybe not for missiles specifically, but for intel gathering, for communications,
that's an entirely different thing than Golden Dome.
I mean, I lump all that into one category of military applications of putting stuff in orbit.
Well,
And
this is not. I mean, one thing we have never successfully done is use a kill vehicle on a satellite, except for that one time we did it to our own satellite from an F-15 on the ground.
now I don't disagree with your premise that we're going to have like this impenetrable, missile defense system from space. Like, I agree with you there. That's not what I see playing out. But I do think
can't be done. Can't be done.
Yeah.
Can't be done. So first of all, if you think we can use lasers to defend the surface of the country from space, they're going to have to fly in geosynchronous orbit, which most people do not think that this is that far. They think, oh, you just fly a satellite out where the space station is, and it just stays there right over the spot. And that's not how orbits work. If you want a geosynchronous orbit, you're out past the freaking moon. So now you're talking about having the power to have a laser that can fire on an incoming vehicle that's coming from past the moon that still has enough power to defeat the oncoming vehicle.
Did you see this thing about the tungsten rods that they plan on dropping from space? Did you see this?
Yeah, that's kind of old news.
Yeah.
I mean, you could drop. I mean, tungsten rods is just bombarding. I mean, you could say, "Oh, we built a cannon in space and we're pointing it down."
Sure.
But yeah, so spy satellites, you'll hear a lot of times, like from the 80s, they would say, "Oh, we have to wait till the spy satellites are over, somebody else because we need the coverage." But that was because they were in lower orbit; they weren't geosynchronous. Now we have geosynchronous orbits, and if you're building a dome, you're not going to have stuff that's going to have gaps in it, right? So you've got to have either a zillion satellites or you've got to have a few that are in geosynchronous orbit, but they're way far away. And one of the gravity Isaac Newton is a butthole, but one of the other things that is just a butthole of physics is called the inverse square law. And that means for every time you double the distance that you're sending an electromagnetic radiation, it is spreading out at the square of the distance. So if I shine a flashlight or, for 4 feet, the beam is spreading 16 feet. Every time you double the distance, that squares again. So it just becomes, so you're saying, okay, well, we're going to use lasers. We're not going to use a flashlight. Well, okay, a 1 millimeter focal point for, 4,000 miles away, it's going to spread out pretty far. And now you've spread your beam to be the size of a truck, and it's no longer focused enough to do any damage. So that's just your problems with lasers. Now, if you want to say, oh, no, we're going to build kill vehicles and they're going to do it. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Now we have another problem. The kill vehicles are all built and are all stationed on the ground. I'm trying to share my screen here, and it's going to be really, really, really low tech here because it's going to be in Microsoft Paint.
I do like the idea, though, that Alphabet is invested in these companies that could be the potential communication infrastructure, because we see Amazon making that play at the same time with Kuiper that they've now renamed Leo.
Okay, did my paint show up?
Let's see. There it is.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably sharing. Let's see if I slide it over. Okay, everybody see that now?
Yeah, but it's like a screen of the screen.
Okay, that's StreamYards won't show the app. It'll show all the tabs you want, but if you want to show an app, you have to share your whole screen.
You should be able to select just the app.
So the way that radar and missiles work is you have like a center point, right? And there are people who know a lot more about this than me. So I am not an expert. I'm just a guy who read a physics book once. Okay. But they're going to have a center point here where let's say X is where your radar dome and your missile battery are located. Okay. So with incoming planes and stuff that's flying at Mach 1, Mach 2, this circle represents about as far as your missiles can go in effective range. Okay. And they can handle that from any direction. Okay. What happens when you start getting in the hypersonic region is you have your place you're trying to defend. Let's say the missiles are all coming from this direction. Well, now your response time from the ground, because your missiles are starting at speed 0, not at the velocity the hypersonics are coming in. So you can only defend this.
Right.
Because you'll have a lot of lead time in front because your radar sees it coming, and presumably you can also fire. Yeah, it's actually more like this.
The reaction time gets
the reaction time
smaller.
laterally and to the rear is drastically reduced. Right, and the faster the incoming missiles are going, the more of an ellipse you get.
But I think this is strictly talking about missile
really
defense.
But this is just showing you what the problems are with air defense, right?
But missile and air defense is only one component of that Golden Dome investment that we're going to see. I think most of it is going to be telecom.
Trying to show you why this investment, at a minimum, is completely pointless.
In terms of rocket defense?
Yeah. So right now we have we have overlapping bubbles, overlapping circles, right? And we have, that could be, the Capitol building. This could be, or that's the White House. This is, we have different, not saying anyone should attack the president, just saying, these are all the targets you really care about. And they're all covered by multiple SAM sites and radars, right? Integrated air defense looks like this. Integrated air defense versus hypersonics looks like this. And then everywhere you want to defend, looks like that. Does that, so for, I'm not sure if that, I think that makes the point to everybody.
Yeah.
But if for anyone thinking that we're going to defend the skies of the United States with missiles the way that the Israelis do, you're crazy. The physics.
I think they could do it for specific, valuable targets, like you mentioned, White House, Pentagon, Manhattan.
Oh yeah. So how do all the people that aren't getting missile coverage feeling about it? And whoever's attacking is going to know where the radars are because they're on and they're emitting radiation. So we're going to fly past those or around them with our hypersonics, and we're going to attack the places that aren't defended. So it starts to suffer from a scaling problem where you just can't build enough kill vehicles and enough radar domes and enough radars to track the incomings and have the response time to hit them, because they're going to fly past you before your kill vehicles can get up to speed and altitude to catch them. That's part of the problem. That's why the SR-71 could never be shot down. It wasn't because it was faster than the missiles, because the missiles would fly at Mach 5 or Mach 6. The SR-71 would fly at Mach 3-ish, plus-ish. So they're plenty faster, but the problem is by the time they got up to altitude, the Mach 3 airplane was already far enough away that it had exhausted the missile's range, even though it was faster and could technically, in theory, if they were having a race, it would win by a lot. It just, gravity is a bitch.
Yeah, and in a world where projectiles are hypersonic, and we've got drones flying around that are hard to defend against, and Boston Dynamics robots from Black Mirror, I think this is the correct take here from Zoe, is that we just need some personal bunkers. But I'll leave the defense of the country to smarter people than I to figure that part out. But I am excited
I'm just saying,
investment.
I think we're being hoodwinked with Golden Dome.
Maybe. Yeah, who knows? We will see how that works out. A few other investments that Google has made. They invested into TeraWulf to help, ramp their token production. I know lots of Wolf holders have been excited about that. They're essentially a neocloud, so they are just getting some additional assistance in terms of accelerating the amount of GCP RPO that they can actually work their way through. And then the other big one that almost never gets talked about, and this is a project that Demis has spent a lot of time on, is Alphafold. This is we're going to use artificial and LLM technology to speed run trials for drug discovery. So there's been some great discussions from the Alphafold folks. If you guys are interested, I'm not going to bore you with the science details because I'm also not a genetic scientist in any way. But one thing to note is that when you do trials for drug discovery and you actually have to use humans and go through all these different processes, you might do your trials and be 2 or 3 years into your trial before you find out that there's actually an issue with your drug. Whereas if you can create a parallel twin and use AI to catch a lot of the mistakes that human researchers are going to be using, you can catch that mistake a lot sooner, and it accelerates the drug discovery process. So that's one thing to note, is that Alphabet does own this property called Alphafold that they're using for drug discovery. And I'm excited to hear more about that in the future. And the other thing that they have is they've got Wing, so Google Wing, and they've actually already partnered with Walmart for expanding their delivery capabilities. These are pretty big right now. You can see from the picture here that these are about the size of a car, so they're definitely not cheap at this point. But this idea of drone delivery is actually a pretty compelling one, and it's one that Amazon has been testing as well.
I have to confess complete ignorance about Wing. This is the first time I've actually ever seen it.
Oh, really? Yeah. So they've got a partnership with Walmart.
I'm looking at 12 rotors, 16 total rotors. These are supposed to be electronic. These are supposed to be like EV flying delivery drones.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got 12 top rotors, but you've also got 4 on the front of the plane there.
Right. So it hovers like
it's almost like an eVTOL. It's like
it doesn't hover like a helicopter, but I guess they're wanting vertical takeoff and landing, and then they will fly using the wing as the primary lifting mechanism rather than using those 12 vertical rotors. Okay, well, I mean, I guess they can test it and refine the process. Yeah. It's not the solution I would have started with.
Yeah, it's just one of those other bets that's out there that, there is going to be a company that wins that drone market. And this could be the beginning of that. This is probably not the final form factor of what we see from drones. And maybe even, a few years down the line, we actually see Google themselves get involved with companies like Red Cat or Ondas on the public side of drone software. So I think that's something that they could work their way into as well.
Rachel, what do you mean mess with these things from the ground? Like I mean, in Texas, I'm 100% sure people are going to shoot at them.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll shoot at them. They'll have fireworks with stuff set up to like launch fireworks in their way. Like, I mean,
yeah, and this is the risk here is, people are just,
we've already seen that be a problem with Waymos. So,
yeah,
literally.
Yeah, you can't fix stupid, can you? Just really quickly, I think we've touched on it.
I know you have more slides to get through.
Yeah, and we're actually almost at the end of them here. But we had the topic of synergies. So we touched on it a little bit before, where you have all these different unique businesses that complement each other. So when you're looking at advertising base in terms of customers, if you're Google and you have all these people who want to advertise, you're able to sell them advertisements on multiple different spots. You can do it through YouTube, you can do it through search, and you can do it through network. And all of that gets supported by the infrastructure and the compute that they have on the cloud side, and the fact that they make their own silicon specifically to optimize for their use cases. You have a lot of overlapping synergies that I just wanted to drive that point home. The next topic I have is for talent, just at a company level. And I think a lot of the Sundar haters really got it wrong 6 to 9 months ago. They were kind of calling for his job. And what we came to find out. Sorry?
I still am.
You still am?
Mm-hmm.
And I think some context that is valuable is Sundar was the product lead for Chrome. That was his baby. And that's what got him the job that he's got today. Chrome is one of the best products that Google has ever made. We're sitting here 15 years later, and it is still by far the best browser. Sundar also studied semiconductors in undergraduate school at Stanford, and he worked at Applied Materials before he joined Google. On a podcast with Mark Benioff at Dreamforce a few weeks back, he said, quote, "It's not an accident that Google works on TPUs." And now we're actually seeing all of this come to fruition with the Meta deal that we mentioned earlier, and the fact that Gemini 3 was trained on TPUs. And here is the quote from Sundar, where he kind of dropped the hammer a little bit on folks who were more or less making their corporate job a nonprofit charity way to exercise their freedom of speech. And how we work, collaborate, discuss, and even disagree. Ultimately, we are a workplace, and our policies and expectations are clear. This is a business and not a place to act in a way that disrupts coworkers and makes them feel unsafe, to attempt to use the company as a personal platform, or to fight over disruptive issues or debate politics. So these comments were followed, or were immediately following the sit-in that they had at the company because GCP was providing cloud services to Israel. Now that you have a different administration in office, there's a new sheriff in town. A lot of this woke culture that was consuming the business has largely been expunged. They had a voluntary exit program to, I think, help get rid of a lot of these folks, where they said, we are requesting for volunteers, for folks who want to leave the company. We are going to be doing some trimming, but if the work is not engaging to you, or you don't believe in Google's mission, we kindly ask you that you take our paycheck and find a different job that more closely aligns with your needs. And you also don't have an administration breathing down their neck about censorship when it comes to YouTube. I know back in 2020, there was words about a certain virus that you couldn't even say. People were getting deplatformed.
You can't say.
Yeah. And I think that's an issue. I mean, society will sort of ultimately determine where that lands of like what's acceptable to be on YouTube. Obviously, we can't come on YouTube and do whatever we want, right? Certain content is like 18 plus adult. It's not meant for the platform. And it really shouldn't be. There's limitations to freedom of speech. I can't come on YouTube and start making threats. So they have to balance that, and it's tricky, but they didn't balance it super well there for a moment where, one side of the aisle was getting really authoritarian with how they saw the world and how they think that their role at Google was actually to police that rather than to build product and ship product. And as you pointed out, Sergey is back at the company now, and so is Noam Shazir from Character AI.
Yep.
Demis has been making lots of progress. Jeff Dean, Josh Woodward. There's a deep culture of talent at Google. And as I put here, deep bench. I think a lot of it gets underappreciated because they're not as flashy.
Now that the OGs are back, I don't think that's the case. Like now that the OGs are back, it's like, oh, daddy's home.
Yeah,
like,
and Sundar's one of the OGs though. I mean, he wasn't a founder. He doesn't have Class A shares to the extent that Larry and Sergey do, but overall, I think it's really, really good to see the entire organization working together cohesively to ship product.
I can't agree with that more. That's an excellent point. Zoe makes a great point though. Just like, part of the issue was the culture, and maybe that's because he wasn't a founder, right? And some people can't do that, or they just you get what you permit, right? Like, so you hired a bunch of woke HR people, and they told you that you needed to be this way, or else you would be subject to blah blah blah. So you gave into it because it didn't seem like it was a problem.
Well, they were making a business decision.
And then when it was obviously a problem, you did not have the power to do anything about it.
Right. Yeah, they made a business decision. Long term. Oh yeah, I was gonna say that they made a long-term business decision and did not end up being the right one because they got lots of pushback for that. But yes, here's your slide. Do you want to talk about it?
This is my lone contribution to this slide deck. But this was by the way, Physical AI is amazing, fun tool to use too. But this is okay, let me rewind. Austin has made the case for the last 3 hours that Google is an amazing company with a portfolio, not just a balance sheet, but a portfolio that is operating at a very high level. And as Chamath Palihapitiya has said, it is an amazing money-making enterprise. And there's a lot of things though that we talked about, like quantum and Waze, quantum and
they do own Waze.
Blah blah blah. They do own Waze, but Waymo and Starlink, SpaceX, and blah blah. All these little things that they have their fingers in all these pies. But we kind of return to, what does Google do every day? What do all those employees, when they show up to the office, if they're working from the office, what are they doing? Their core operations, right, which is largely search, but it's also going to be making the backbone of the company operate, making the backbone of YouTube physically operate. What is their operating profit? They do all this work, and they spend all this money. So what's left at the end? That's the orange bars. I can't see the years right now because StreamYard screens my screen, but you can see that is going up and to the right. And then the blue line tells you how much we're actually keeping of all of the revenue that we brought in on the orange bars. So this is not including all their investments. This is not including their little moonshots. This is not any of the other investments that they've made that are paying them. This is their cash from operations, what they actually make and take them at the end of the day.
Gross
not only are they making
OpEx.
more, yes, not only are they making more, they're keeping more of it. And that is going up and to the right as well. And that to me tells the story of why I am buying Google.
Yeah, you just got a really high quality business that continues to execute. And a lot of what we covered in the presentation is why we can, both saw that they weren't being disrupted, but also why we think that they have lots of room to grow their fundamental numbers moving forward. So they have ran up a lot, but just to drive this point home here, the top two charts are how they return capital to shareholders. So they are doing significant buybacks here. You would expect that from Google because they have the most net income of any company in the S&P 500, more than Microsoft, more than NVIDIA, more than Apple. Number one, net income king. The only company in the world that actually does more net income is Saudi Aramco. And they don't have quite the margins here that Google has. They're also paying dividends now. Even though it is a smaller dividend, you are not necessarily going to have your SCHD dividend type investors buying into Google, but this does return value to the shareholders in a way that's really valuable. Return on equity is still in the high 30s. So that's been improving along the way. So you hear lots of hemming and hawing about the CapEx. Guys, they're still paying dividends, repurchasing stock. Their return on equity is 37%. And look at the return on capital. It's still in the high teens. And even though they've been spending more money on CapEx than ever, their ROIC is higher than it was pre-COVID. So if the story was that
not a bubble.
Yeah. So if the story was that all this money and this NVIDIA tax is all lighting money on fire, we're certainly not seeing it here. And I think, Doug, you had something to share here.
So shout out to the great Matt Money, the real Matt Money.
Matt Moolah.
My friend. Just, that you've all seen this meme before, but this is absolutely correct. And it's even worse now because poor Matt made this meme at 7:30 this morning. Things have changed. So say you are someone with some cash on the side, Austin, and you're interested after seeing the last 3 hours of your work here and my attempt to discuss it intelligently. What is the value difference now at the current price versus the price when you were initially establishing your position, which obviously was a fantastic identification and trade. And no one else wanted these shares at $150, but now they all want them at $310, $320, $330. So for someone who's considering shopping today, they didn't buy on Black Friday last weekend, but they waited till maybe Cyber Tuesday tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of prices are they paying? Obviously double compared to or more than double compared to what they bought or what you bought in May, but how has the company grown since then? And that growth, how is that like how have those ratios moved around, and what would they be buying tomorrow versus, and let's remove the context of what someone was buying back in May. What are they buying tomorrow?
Yeah. So you're correct. You have to remove the anchoring bias, because saying that a stock has doubled in 6 months, you can't know just in a vacuum of saying that statement, a stock has doubled in 6 months, if that means that it's already made its move. If the fundamentals of a company have improved that warranted a 5x in the stock and the company doubles, there's still alpha there, right?
Now I'm not. Yeah, you just waited for everybody to start moving.
Yeah. Now, the charts that I've got on the screen here, you can see that the valuation metrics, the traditional valuation metrics, have moved a lot. And that's just what's going to happen when a stock price moves so rapidly in 6 months. There's a few things going on here. First is that you can make the argument, which I did very strongly, that their valuation never should have been so cheap to begin with. They were in the basement in terms of pricing and valuation, like a 16 PE for one of the best companies in the world. What are we talking about here? Now, the other thing that you need to have happen for them to grow into these valuations, because they're now pushing up against, a 10 price to sales and a 50 price to free cash flow, you need some of these fundamentals to continue to improve. So that operating income chart, it's pretty similar to the one that we had from Fiscal AI. You need the operating income to improve. And at some point, you need the free cash flow growth to come back into picture. You can see it's sort of leveled off here since 2021 because they're making these investments that are driving operating margin and profit margin. So they're spending money, but they're getting it back. But at some point, a lot of people in the market, they like to value a company by free cash flow. And those particular investors might want to see free cash flow growth return to the company before they send it higher. So what I've done with my position, I had 55% of my portfolio in the stock back in May when it seemed like the risk to the downside was pretty much almost nothing short of the company collapsing. But now that the stock has doubled, I don't have any options. I sold those at around 250 about 3 weeks after the DOJ trial. So the DOJ trial wrapped up. You had the clearing event. The stock went from $200 up to like 250 in about 3 weeks. That's where I sold my calls. But I still have 45% of my portfolio in shares itself. And the reason is because all the catalysts that we spent talking about, where you have YouTube growing at 20%, cloud growing at 35%, search actually re-accelerating up to 16%. So not only is search not dying, it's actually improving. And cloud operating margins are only getting better. And then you have all these call options. I like to call them call options on the company themselves from a parent level organization of Quantum, of Waymo, of all these different side bets that they make. So I don't have any plans to sell. The idea that a stock is doubled, it mentally, because of anchoring bias, it gets tricky to convince yourself why you should be buying a company that's just doubled. But if you look at it through the lens of they're still a cheaper PE than Microsoft and Apple, well, then you could start to contextualize how much do I want to pay for a high quality hyperscaler. And if you believe that Apple should have a higher PE than Google, then don't buy the stock. If you think Google is going to continue to grow their operating income and their margins, and that for the next decade, this is going to be the AI company of the future, and that AI infrastructure investments are going to continue to be worth it, it could make sense to hold the stock. Now, there are some risk. There's some risk here. So a few of them that I pointed out, this isn't going to be all of the risk, but this is a few of them. One of them is the NVIDIA tax hindering free cash flow growth, of course, but it's also EU regulation. So you've got really big market of Europe, and if the EU keeps playing silly games, that could affect Google. They just paid a parking ticket, speeding ticket, whatever you want to call it, of about $3 billion, which is less than 1 week of net income for them. But who knows what laws, rules, regs they continue to change. You could even end up with a situation where regulation at a state level hinders their growth. So whether that's with self-driving, where each state wants to regulate it individually, or with AI in general, where you get each and every state wanting to have their own set of rules to AI, that would slow down business progress a lot. And then you can also have anti-AI populism. And what I mean by that is, movements that want to inhibit the construction and use of data centers because of NIMBYism, whether that be water or electric prices. You can also have, labor what would you call it? Labor, not operatives, but labor activists who want
the people who are the reasons we can't have nice things.
Yeah. So you'll have Luddites who want to protect jobs, and you'll have activists that want to make the case that Google is the reason that people are losing jobs, even if it's not. It might be. We don't know yet. It hasn't happened. But you could have a wave of populism and politicians supporting that anti-AI movement. So the safety of margin that we saw back in May has been removed from the stock. It just has. Like the stock, I wouldn't be surprised or sad really if the stock went back to 260. It just is what it is. That's what happens when you buy a stock, right? It can go down. You can have projects that might not work out. You could have a big loss. Any of these things that I mentioned here, these risks could play out. But I feel pretty comfortable holding my position because I'm thinking in the long term, with all the products that they have and the properties that they own, they're first or second place in just about every category that matters. Information retrieval, large language model, cloud, semiconductor, self-driving, and now they're getting into the mix on robotics. You put all that together, and I can't find a compelling reason as to why I should sell. And Amit mentioned this on his stream earlier today, but if you sell Google, what do you go buy instead? What's the better move?
I had nothing for you. I mean, you nailed it in slide 4. If the EPS continues to grow at 30% a year without a multiple change, which you now have received, you're getting a double in 3 years. Like, what do you want, people? I mean, if you told me I could double every 3 years by owning one company, it's hard to not sit back and say, why am I not all in on that? Yeah.
I just feel like the likelihood of them continuing to compound here, given the competency of the management, the opportunity that exists with AI, both on, agentic AI, you have enterprise AI, you have physical AI.
I mean, you just think of how YouTube is going to grow.
Yeah.
Like that alone is going to consume the internet.
You could argue that it already is.
You hear like the all-in guys even talk about it. They're like, oh, my kids don't watch Netflix. They just watch YouTube all day. I have to take away the iPads so that they stop watching YouTube. That's what the kids are growing up on. They're not even on TikTok yet. That's for older people. Like the behavior, the pattern, and the ability to have the long form, medium form, or short form without advertisements is amazing. I'm on YouTube all the time. I know that.
This is just ads. This doesn't even cover subscriptions. So we've doubled the company in 4 years, just in terms of YouTube ads. And I'm sure subscriptions have grown fast. I mean, if we add back in subscriptions, platforms, and devices, this is going to include Play Store and Pixel and any devices they have. So it's not perfect. But, I mean, holy smokes, look at this. You go from combined about $40 billion ARR to, now you're looking at $86 billion. I mean, this is just tremendous.
So let's pull up a couple of things. So let's look at Google versus some of the other Mag 7, if we've got time.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
I know there was another channel that was doing a deep dive on Meta tonight. Let's look at some comparisons on prices. Like, what are you getting for your money if you're buying Google at the current price versus, say, Meta?
That is a great question.
And Meta is a great business. By the way, Meta is an ad business almost exclusively. So if you think that Google advertisement is neutral to zero, like, if you're working from that bare thesis, then you have to say the exact same thing about Meta.
So this is just AI mode, and this is taking consensus estimates. I actually looked at this this morning. Meta's still by far the cheapest Mag 7 in terms of forward PE. Then you've got
the text is really small, and I'm not looking at my phone right now where I can blow it up. So it's 22.
Yeah, it's 22. So for Meta, they're at a 22 forward PE. That's 2026 numbers. Alphabet, this is likely not updated from the after hours move. So they're looking at roughly a 28 to 30 forward PE.
Okay.
NVIDIA, you've got a wider range there of forward PE depending on the earnings. That
you also have the risk of the cyclicality of chips, which people talk about a lot. I don't agree with, but it is something people talk about.
Yeah, that argument is
that multiple could get brought down.
Apple is still at a 29. I think that bakes in a lot of earnings growth from an iPhone refresh cycle. Microsoft is looking at a 35, Amazon at a 38, and then you've got Tesla out in outer space.
Out in outer space, yeah. It's a different business entirely. It's a startup now. It's a startup with the world's biggest piggy bank.
And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the same thing with price to operating cash flow.
I'd like to look at PEG too.
Ay. Let's put it in a nice clean table.
I always forget to ask for that.
To put it in a table?
Yeah.
Let's see. There we go. Okay, so we've got, again, Tesla. Again? Yes. We've got Tesla out in its own world. And then you've got NVIDIA sitting at a 70 price to operating cash flow. Operating cash flow is not going to include CapEx. So just to keep that in mind, we could do free cash flow as well, which would include CapEx, but operating cash flow is going to exclude CapEx.
Yeah. But it's basically, if you're saying everybody is spending out of their minds right now, we don't even need to look at that number.
And we could look at that number too, if you want to add that back in. But, Apple is still at a 36, Alphabet at a 31, Microsoft at a 26, and then Amazon at a 21. Amazon, I don't feel like the traditional valuation metrics are really useful for Amazon because they spend so much on CapEx and reinvest all of their dollars that I feel like their business capital allocation is so unique.
Yeah.
But yeah, Google's not super expensive.
Startup that's got a giant piggy bank of a car, that's got a car company founding it now.
We'll do the same with free cash flow here. So you've got NVIDIA at a 101, Microsoft at a 58. They've spent lots of money on CapEx, as we know.
Yep.
Amazon, they spend all of their money. They reinvest it all. So again, this is a good representation of the point that I just made. Apple's at a 52, Meta at a 43. And I'm not sure what happened here with Google. Why do we have an asterisk? A reliable price to free cash flow cannot be made available. Well, that's interesting.
Why not?
That's a good question. I know I can find one, though. I'm showing their price to free cash flow as 52, and that's on stockanalysis.com, a 52 price to free cash flow.
And that's at today's price. That's at today's price.
Yeah, that based on close.
Probably not after hours, but certainly probably close.
Yeah,
we hope.
Yeah. So they have got a lot of multiple expansion. So I think the takeaway here is that any future gains are going to be likely not from multiple expansion. The easy money's been made. That you're going to get any gains from execution. And a lot of that's somewhat being priced in. But, what a run it's been. to be able to identify this. And I know we had a lot of people who were on the train ride with us. You were on the ride. So cold. I'm beneficial.
I'm on the ride, but I'm on the ride at 3%, not at 50.
I know June was on the ride. Matt Money was on the ride. Tanner from Future Investing. So lots of folks were.
Chris Patel's on the ride. He's been in with spreads.
Yeah, and he bought recently, didn't he? I think he bought more recently. Thought I saw him say something like that. But yeah, I'm not selling as long as they continue to execute. Now, if some of the other names that I like really get beat up in some sort of crash, would I look at tapping the Google piggy bank? Sure. But right now, I just don't see any reason to sell.
Well, right now, I'll remind our current shareholders. Okay, not financial advice. We're in price discovery. This could get crazy. This could double this year again. Like it could. I mean, we saw the money is looking for somewhere to go. Look what happened when Oracle announced their stupid deal with Microsoft on their earnings day. Like,
yeah, but it gave all that back.
Company in the world moved 20% in a day. I mean, the money is looking for places to win. And one thing that Google gives you right now is for all the doom and gloom from Burry. That's all predicated on the NVIDIA. But again, like I used the analogy of Windows and Intel before. So now it's kind of like OpenVIDIA or something like that. Maybe I'll come up with a better name for it. Chat, see if you can help us out. OpenAI and NVIDIA. How do you put those two together? Well, if you're in Google, you are limiting your you're gaining the exposure to the technology change in the world, but you're limiting your exposure to the actual black box of the company and NVIDIA's cyclicality, possible cyclicality. Does that make sense?
It does. Now, if we look at this just from a really back of the napkin math simplistic way here, and we look at just their EPS growth over time, we can see that basically pre-COVID to today, they've done a 4x in their EPS. And even just going back to when the stimulus checks were flying around, they've doubled their EPS since then as well. So extrapolating that out, we could say that if Google's trailing 12-month EPS is going to be $20 a share, let's call it 3 or 4 years from now, that is still going to get you a double even if the multiple doesn't change. So you still have that opportunity. Now you can get some you can get some multiple compression there as well. Like it could trade back to a 22 or 25 PE. But if it maintains its 30 PE and the EPS continues to grow, yeah, and I don't see any reason why the EPS can't continue to grow because they're executing on such a high level. But that's actually all the material I had. We did it. We made it through all the slides.
We did it. We made it through all the slides. All right. Well, it's been almost 4 hours. That's a very healthy stream. We didn't get to sports or really anything else in the macro. I gotta confess, I didn't watch the Bengals Patriots. I didn't watch really any football this weekend.
You didn't miss much.
I didn't miss much.
Higgins got hurt. Chase was suspended. Yeah.
Oof. Okay. Yeah, I didn't miss much at all. And I did watch the 2 new episodes of Landman. That show picked up right where it left off. That is absolute fire. Billy Bob Thornton is fantastic.
You told me to watch this one, right? I don't think I did yet.
Yeah, and Taylor Sheridan, God love him. He's like the opposite of J.R.R. Martin or George R.R. Martin. Like that dude is writing concurrently, like at the same time. He's the main writer on like 6 shows. I don't know how he does it.
That sounds stressful. That sounds stressful. But yeah, I think that is a pretty comprehensive breakdown, company profile of the company. I'm going to add some timestamps. That way people can jump around as they want at the end.
So I'll give you something that'll really break your brain.
Yeah.
Okay, we just did 4 hours. Now you need to clip this into a bunch of shorts.
Exactly. Yeah.
And not for nothing, but you know, on the stupid little rocket videos I make, if I put together like a long produced like 20-minute thing with multiple camera angles and soundtracks and graphics and everything, that'll get like 30 views. And if I just take like the raw footage I shot on an iPad and upload it as a short, it'll get 3,000 views.
Yeah, it's a different algorithm. For sure.
So it's a different algorithm. So you could chop this up in a zillion places and get a whole bunch of views on it. But I do appreciate everybody came to hang out tonight. I know we're just getting started. I'd like to see us add some more folks. We also were struggling to get our time together this week with the holiday week, to be able to get our stuff.
Oh, we made it happen.
And Austin has been working on this, obviously put a lot of work into it. So I appreciate him sharing that with me. I feel like I'm off to buy more Google tomorrow. I'm not sure which portfolio I'm gonna put it in, to be honest with you, but you definitely gave me FOMO and feel like I don't have enough. So I am the Maddie Capital meme.
Well, the good thing is that you saw the opportunity and you were also buying options at that same point in time.
Yeah, but I sold them before they paid off.
Oh, when did you sell them?
I'm just in shares. I bought to 2% in shares of my portfolio. In shares. So then I also felt like I had a lot of other exposure through VTI and VOO.
Sure.
And whatever the value one is, they're all, and then the dividend one, they're all freaking the same. Google is well represented in all of my portfolios, but man, congrats on having the foresight. That's a heck of a trade.
Yeah, and it's a business that I wanted to own for a long time. My portfolio in 22 and 23, I would have been buying the dip at $80, $90. But there's another company out there that sort of caught my eye as being not only like just higher quality for what they do, but also, they offered a lot more upside. And that Palantir bet that I think a lot of Palantir shareholders, it paid off so fast. I wouldn't have sold anything and I would have just held it for a decade if it did not go from $7 to $200 within a year and a half. I didn't expect it to hit $100 until probably like 2029, and it all just happened.
Yeah, we were planning our $100 party to be in 2030.
So I had the opportunity when I started trimming my position there from the run up to start looking into the company a little bit more, and I found it really compelling that one of the best companies in the world on a platform that everybody uses every day, YouTube. There was people on YouTube live streams saying how Google was dead, like they're putting comments on a YouTube post from their Android phone talking about how Google's dead. And it just, at a certain point, the disconnect between reality and investor expectations became so large that I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be a contrarian, this is one of the best companies to do it with because of the quality of the business and the durability that a lot of their moats have.
Do you think there's a familiarity bias where they're like, oh, this is something I use every day, it's not really that valuable?
You're saying they underestimate the value of it?
Yeah, they underestimate the value of the company because they use it every day. It's so ubiquitous. They don't even think about like, I forget who it was saying, what is DoubleClick? And you were showing it's the most profitable purchase ever made in the history of finance, right? And they're like, what is DoubleClick? So, like, what are these things that people get so exposed to on a regular basis they just don't even see them anymore?
I think, so it's the familiarity. I also think it's underestimation of these secular trends like e-commerce or social media and independent media. I think the other thing that gets underestimated as well is how difficult it is to build something like YouTube. There's a lot of work that goes into building a platform like YouTube. People have the idea that they bought it in 2006 and then it just runs itself.
Truth Social's trying to do it, right? And they can barely do it. Or not Truth Social. What's the
Rumble?
Rumble. Yeah, Rumble's trying to do it. They're not anywhere close to succeeding as far as I know. Like, what are they doing? Like 9 million a year in revenue or something?
Yeah, there's just a lot of features that you have to build into the platform. You also have to develop a system for creators to be able to monetize. Otherwise, they're not going to show up there. YouTube is also where the audience is. So you've got that network effect of, if you go over to Rumble, you have to get a critical mass of people on the platform. Otherwise, creators aren't going to show up there. I felt super confident in just buying a high quality dislocated company. And, they've just continued to execute since May. OpenAI is now on GCP. DOJ lawsuit has been settled. Search is continuing to grow. Cloud is reaccelerating. TPUs are now going to be sold to other companies, which is going to create an interesting discussion around NVIDIA. It's just, it's incredible. I got a little bit lucky with the timing.
NVIDIA is going to continue to print for a very long time. That's an amazing business.
Waymo
their
expanding.
Software hasn't even kicked in yet. Yeah, Waymo's going to be expanding. I think they're adding cities right now faster than they're adding vehicles. So I'm not sure how long that is going to take to appreciably show up in the bottom line of the company. I remain cautiously optimistic on that. Because it's like if you have 20,000 vehicles, but you expand to 200 cities, then you have 1,000 vehicles per city. If I did the math right. Or you have 100, was it? Did I do that right? I don't know. I'm 3 bourbons in, folks. Grant me a little bit. So if you have 20,000 vehicles divided by 100, that's 100. Okay, so you have,
So let's say, how many vehicles do you want to make it?
I just said 20,000. I don't know how many. Let's say 20,000.
Well, so right now they've got just about 3,000, 4,000 vehicles.
Oh, okay. So I'm already granting them 10x. Okay, we'll just say 5,000 vehicles.
5,000?
Yep.
Now, the money's not going to really be made here at 5,000, but if you assume that they do...
I'm just saying divide that by 100 cities in the country. That's 2 cities per state.
Well, I was just going to do like the total top line revenue of 5,000 cars doing 40 rides a day. And if each ride is about $25, you're looking at $5 million of fare.
Not bad for
each
lunch,
day.
Matt.
Yeah.
A rounding error for Google's.
And that would be $1.8 billion for that fleet of 5,000 cars. Now this is very, again, back of the napkin math here. But, if you get to the point that you've got 20,000 vehicles and they're able to, went way too far. Way too far.
I'm not that drunk.
Yeah. So you get to 20,000 vehicles, which again, that's not that many vehicles. Like they're still going to be doing significantly less rides than Uber.
Right.
Uber right now.
I'm saying in 100 cities, that's 2 cities per state. So what I'm questioning right now, Austin, is they're rolling out cities faster than they're bringing vehicles online. And
for now, but the vehicles will catch up.
Yeah, for sure. But how many years is that going to take?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because to do our whole thing. But Tesla has people actually buying the vehicles which supports building the factories and handling all the fabrication, right? If you are, so what is that? If they have 5,000 vehicles in 100 cities, that's 500 vehicles per city. I don't know if that becomes, I don't know if that's enough to create the critical mass that we were talking about.
Well, and that's why they would only roll out in cities that have that demand. So that's why they started in some of the biggest car markets, like LA, Phoenix, Austin, and Atlanta. Those are like car cities, car dominant. But yeah, if we go back to
there's still geofenced. So we'll have to see how the whole thing plays out. I'm just afraid that this is going to, they're going to front run creating demand, and then they're not going to be able to fulfill it, or they're going to be using Uber to fulfill it to the point where it just becomes ubiquitous with Uber and no one really cares anymore. I mean, these are compelling numbers, but I'm familiar with them just from being a Tesla investor previously, right? So, I mean, autonomous rides is an amazing business opportunity, regardless of winner take most, or regardless of who's Coke and who's Pepsi, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
and I think there's room for both to win. Yeah, they both can win. And then now this number here, 7.3 billion. This is 20,000 cars. Again, 40 rides a day times 365 times $25 a ride, 7.3 billion top line. So this is obviously not profit. You have to subtract out the operating cost, employees, R&D, and the cars themselves.
So if they wanted to create a vehicle, it's going to take probably another $1 billion or so dollars. If you just think about not just the engineering that goes into it, but then the regulatory hump that they have to get over.
Yeah, the manufacturing as well. This is why I think it's a good idea for them to partner with Toyota, for them to be able to sell cars that are direct, because they'll be able to separate it.
Right, like Elon has said several times, Tesla is not the car; it's the factory. So if Google were to create a car, where are they going to build 1 million units?
And that's also not their core competency. They don't want to be involved.
And that's not something they know how to do. So, I mean, they don't even know, like we said earlier, they don't know how to make silicon. They still have to outsource that to TSM. So, how vertically integrated are we expecting them to be? If they had a branded Google vehicle, I still wouldn't expect it to be made by Google, right? It might be more like a iPhone, like designed by Google in, not Cupertino, but designed by Google in San Francisco or something, right? But
and then subcontracted out to Foxconn.
Yep. And then they pay a giant tariff on it.
Well, I think that does it here. We're approaching 4 hours. Thanks everybody for watching the stream. Hopefully you found it useful. Follow my X. It's the same one that's right here. Austin Finds Alpha. Follow Dougie's X. Links are both in the description. Subscribe to Dougie's YouTube channel, because he's got
if you like watching rocket videos,
man, cool rocket videos. And then I'll timestamp everything so folks can find things easily here. But that should be it. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.